What is going on, guys? Welcome to Wednesday Night Livestream. Tonight, we have Brandy, aka BTheFountain, and Oral, aka ReefingWithO. How are you guys doing today?
Amazing.
I'm good.
Excellent. Brandy, I have a quick question. Be the fountain. The fountain of what? Happiness, joy, reef tanks? Like, what is this?
So it's an old baseball coach. I forget who it is, but his quote is, "Be a fountain, not a drain." And the whole thing is like give to things instead of taking away.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've used it as like gaming stuff, like on the bottom for years, maybe 6 or 7 years. So I was just like, oh, this is a good one. It's like water.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, that's cool. I was just curious. Every time I read your name, I've been curious to find out.
Yeah, I like the quote.
No, that's awesome. Like the intro music. Thanks, Bert. All right, welcome guys to the Wednesday night live stream. Today is just kind of like a reef hangout. I don't know if we really have a topic. So if you guys have any specific questions, let me know. Otherwise, we're chatting reef and yeah, all things salty. So what's going on with your guys' tanks? What's new and exciting?
The most exciting thing for me, sorry, I'm taking over. Taking over is I got a lid.
Nice.
I got a lid like about 10 minutes before the live stream started. I actually went live on Instagram. I was like, very excited to get the egg crate off the top of the tank.
That's awesome. So what lid did you go with?
Otto Aquatics.
Yep.
I've been friends with him for ages. Probably, I mean, since the beginning, since I had a reef tank, I think me and him have been friends since then. So since the beginning.
Nice.
So he gave me a nice discount on it.
Nice.
Still a pricey lid, but God, they're sturdy, and I just think they're awesome.
That's awesome.
Some good stuff.
It's a huge upgrade from egg crates, so that's pretty awesome.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And it like sits, it's got a like invisible profile, so you can't even see it in the tank. It's awesome.
Oh, that is the best part. That must be like night and day compared to egg crate now, actually.
Yes, it was sticking out like this far. Can you even see it in the video? I can't tell if you
No,
can
that's
see
how
it.
stealthy it is.
Yeah.
Not being a seal is a good thing, personally, because I like them to be... I love no lid, but obviously I don't want fish jumping, right? So I'm all for as minimalistic as possible.
Is that what extra features did you get added to it? Did you get like a feeding door and?
I did some really cool things. So I'll show y'all what I do. Sorry, I just got up and left. That's probably a no-no.
Welcome back.
So I have my Nori clip, which is 2 clips, and one side clips Nori, and so it free floats. The other side clips to the lid with a fishing line in between.
Nice.
And so I actually had on the feeding door and put a hole through it. So what I'm going to do is actually just fish this through the lid and put a little small bead on the other end so it can't come out.
Yeah.
And so instead of having 2 clips, I'm just going to have this like free floating on the lid. I can open the lid, pull it out,
Nice.
add Nori to it, and not have to worry about getting my hands wet.
That's a not bad way to do it. I have the little 2 little fishies magnet one. I always like move the lid over and I got to slide it up the glass. And then somehow one of the tanks rips out all the nori like 2 minutes later. I don't even know how they do it, but literally that thing's empty in 2 minutes, like every day.
Yeah, I hate those things. That's actually pretty cool. You've given me an idea because I hate like I don't have as fancy as you do, but I have like like the what is it called, Dev? The one that Ecotech I forgot the company, D&D Jump Guard Pro, and I have the little feeding door that I cut through the mesh. But Nori, you still have to lift it up, and because it fits so neat, I don't have fingernails because I chew them down. I gotta dig in and and that thing just it creates saltwater streak down the tank every time. So that's actually pretty cool. I think I might try that.
That is good.
I think that they like it better too, because then the algae kind of flows in the current and they have to come and get it. Maybe it's me anthropomorphizing them, but I think they enjoy it.
I might try this now. It's a good idea. I don't really like stuff on the end of my glass. Like I prefer it being see-through, so the floating feels less intrusive, which is good.
Yeah.
I learned something today in the first 5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah,
We're done.
Perfect. Done. Work done.
Cheers.
DC Reefer. Devin never invited me. You can come on the next one, buddy. Okay.
My first show and tell item today is I've been having some issues with my tank. I don't know what's going on. I sent off multiple ICP tests, but I've decided I want to test more.
Yeah.
So, with all my test kits all over the place, I can never find stuff for them. So I think Dev, I've been messaging you, asking you like, hey, what do you? So I bought this thingy at Home Depot.
Nice.
Where I've taken all the Hannah checkers out the thingy, and I've put all my Hannah checkers. Everything that I use to test is in here. So Hannah checkers, I got my Elos calcium, got my Red Sea magnesium, just everything is here. So when I need to test, this is my testing lab.
Heck yeah.
And just so I don't need syringes anywhere, Dev, I was messaging you last week, and I did get the, I don't know what you call it, but this thing that automatically like...
Oh, heck yeah. That thing's great.
Yeah. Yes. So I can set how many milliliters I want. So
Yeah.
just boom. So... Yeah, so, see, you're holding out, B. So I don't need, like, pipettes everywhere because I just use this and just...
Isn't it nice?
And
It is.
I write on the tips with a permanent marker what I use them for, so I don't have to waste them all.
That's two things in 6 minutes I learned. Oh.
Now, the other thing is, so you can buy, like, bulk packs of these tips on, like, Amazon for cheap. And these also work on the Two Little Fishies feeder if you guys use that thing.
Oh, is that for the Julian stain?
Well, I don't know if it's for it, but it fits on it, and I use it as those. And if you want it bigger, you could chop it off to make it bigger, or for coral feeding. Like, that thing's perfect for that.
I love Julian's thing.
Yeah.
All right, I got to get a piece of paper because that's 3 things now, and I think I'm going to lose. It might be higher than I can count tonight, so let me just write that's 3
Hey,
things.
you know what? The nice thing is, you can go back and rewatch it.
This is true.
Hey, somebody's asking where are we from? I don't think we did, like everyone knows Devin, but I don't think, maybe some quick introductions where we're from. I don't know if you want to start, Brandy.
It's all you, Randy.
Since I keep taking over everything else, it makes sense.
Ladies first.
I have, okay. Sorry, I was looking at the YouTube channel, not what y'all were doing. I'm originally from South Georgia, like the very corner, like near Alabama. Can't go more south than western Georgia and be in Georgia. So middle of nowhere. And I live in Charlotte now.
Nice. How long have you been into reefing?
That's a complicated question.
It always is.
So I've been into the ocean since I was like 8. Me and my dad used to go to the 4-H research center and like help with the sea turtles and like collect animals from the ocean to do counts and stuff. And then in college, I minored in geophysics, which was like ocean chemistry. Did you not know this?
We're learning.
I was gonna say like she's an actual scientist, but this is way cooler. So,
I've interned at the Georgia Aquarium as like that was part of my degree program. I had to get the minor, but it was fun. It was not. It was like, oh geez, twist my arm.
Damn.
So I like over a decade ago, I interned at the Georgia Aquarium. That was amazing. And I never wanted a reef tank because of those experiences, right? I'm like, I'm never doing this. But every time we'd go, we always had fish tanks, and every time we'd go, my husband would be like, can we get this fish? I'm like, no, that's salt. He's like, what about this fish? I'm like, no, that's salt. He's like, what about this fish? No, that's salt. And he got so frustrated, and finally he was like, I really want to do saltwater. I was like, I want you to understand, it's going to be expensive, and I'm going to be obsessed. He's like, that's okay. So probably, I think about 3 or 4 years ago was when I finally started a saltwater tank.
Nice. That's awesome. So you've been into it for a long time, and you finally took the plunge to have your own personal tank.
Yeah.
Okay, now when you worked at the aquarium, why did you not want to have your own tank? Were you like too much work, too expensive? Like, what was the main thing that was like holding you back?
Yeah, so that was like 15 years ago? And I just don't think the technology was... I was always surprised that I'm almost his age. I can see your face.
I don't know how old either of you are, actually.
I hope you don't expect me to follow you, like, after you've said that. Like, I'm just from Brooklyn. Like, I have nothing to add to that. Like, I don't... Oh,
I'm just a crazy girl. It's okay. Did we lose O?
He'll be back. I think we did.
Oh,
Serious. I'm just a crazy girl. So, yeah, I think the equipment was just very different, and like my experience was, it was just very difficult. Everything was really expensive, and it's labor intensive, right? Like, and like it was part of what I told my husband. Like, if I start this, I'm going to be completely obsessed, and I don't want you to complain about how much time I spend on it. And he's loved it, so it's been
That's awesome.
good.
It's good that you know you're obsessed up front. I think most reef keepers have a certain level of obsession.
Yeah.
Comes with the territory.
Yeah, agreed.
you need to be.
Yep.
Whenever I tell so I am starting a new job and I have to take like a day off because I, like going to Reefapalooza, Chicago. And you kind of have to say, early on the job, you don't want to take a day off, but to say like, hey, I'm going to a saltwater fish conference. Like, that is a hard thing to explain to someone. They're like, huh? Like, fish that you eat? I'm like, no, like aquarium fish. They have conferences for that. So we do sound. When I was coming back from Macna, Vegas, I think, Devin.
Yeah.
I was bringing back a skimmer, and the lady from TSA was like, "What's this?" And I thought it was funny to like, "Hey, I'm coming from a fish conference, and I have a and I used some fancy words."
Yeah.
And she didn't find it funny, and I got the extra search.
Oh no. I one time coming back, what I've brought so many, because I got so much gear from shows, because I like to get stuff at the end of the show because you always get the display models for cheap. So like I remember like when I originally got the Reef brought lugging that thing back on the plane, and like I was laughing because when I got home they're like, this was inspected for your safety. I'm like, oh, thanks for inspecting my water tester. It's like, but yeah, it's funny. Mike, quick shout out, thank you so much for the super chat. I never forget where it was from the pizza episode. That was good. Can't forget that one.
So we're just gonna skip over me. Hey,
Hi, how's it going? Tiny.
I apparently locked him out of the house, which is why I had a front.
Do you like the reef tanks too? I'll take that as a yes.
I'm interested in fish as much as my mom.
Not as obsessed? Oh, just as obsessed? That's pretty good.
No, not
A
as
little bit.
not as much
Only
as my mom.
because your legs have light blue, and I can look at it and my eye won't be blind.
Perfect. That's all it takes.
Blindness.
I know. What do I have? I don't really have a solar tell. I've got more solar stuff today. I bought a used solar panel today. This has become a slight obsession to expand this a bit more. But some guy was selling some used 250 watt panels, so I got one. And then he also had a broken panel, but it still worked. So he's like, I'm gonna get rid of this. You want it? I was like, okay. So it's all like shattered in the bottom, but it still puts out like 6 amps of power. So I'm like, sweet, free panel. So anyway, that's my excitement of the day.
I saw your video on the back. Okay, that's interesting. Interesting to see what you do with those.
I'm still working on it, but
All right. I don't have anything to follow up, Brant. Like, I've been keeping tanks for 8 years, I think. But I just love equipment. I think my obsession with equipment probably stops me from having like a reef tank. Like my friends have to like remind me, like, hey, you made a promise, you're not gonna touch anything. So I really love that about my friends. They're like, hey, like, yeah, no. Because I think when Devin and I talk and we're like discussing equipment, I'm like, yeah, I had that, and I think I took it off and I got rid of it already, and it's just, yeah, like just changing lights. Apparently, changing lights every 6 months prevents you from having like a, if you want to do just softies, that's cool, but apparently SPS don't like changes too much, so that's kind of my pet peeve.
It took me years to learn that lesson, and in my early days of doing content on YouTube, I would change stuff all the time and test stuff, which is good for making videos, but terrible for your tank. So, yeah, the less you bugger with it, the happier your tank will be. So that's the tricky thing, especially with lighting, because that's a big one.
Well, I've had these Radions since they came out, and I haven't at least touched the lights.
I see a very tall Kessel above your tank as well. That's new.
Yeah. Oh, you haven't heard about this? This is I had I had like a 10-gallon NEM tank, and my NEMs were outgrowing it. So I saw Jake Adams' video where he had that mangrove tank and had the Kessels high over it. So it's right next to the TV. So I thought, hey, I don't want anything that's going to cause too much spread in the line of the TV. So that Kessel is about 2.5 feet over the tank.
Yep.
And then I'm using the really narrow reflector.
Nice.
So I think it's cool. It's actually working. It's a 25 Lagoon. It's the one that I kind of fought to like take the, that was a story by itself.
Yeah.
I started with fishing line. I'm going back. Then I got a cheese grater, cheese knife, a cheese cutter, the wire.
Yeah.
And then I think I was talking to Greg Carroll, and he's like, "Hey, use an X-Acto knife." And I just thought that was a joke because, like, that just to me that sounds like something like a Bond. Bond's like, what is it? His tech guy would make it like, hey, here's that X-Acto knife.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, it's like a hobby knife that's really sharp. So when I got it,
I'll tell a story about one in a second.
Okay.
Sorry.
it was like cutting through butter. So when I put it and cut through that took me 5 minutes what I was fighting with, like cheese grater, guitar string, like all that and then it just took like a little bit of, elbow grease to like pull the panels out. And that was it. And like what took me like a week of trying like fishing line, guitar string, cheese graters, took like 5 minutes.
You have heard, right tool for the right job.
It's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
The most I've felt those battles of trying to remove NEMS from a tank and like prying it and credit cards and ice cubes and hours of trying to get your fingernail under the foot. One thing that actually worked was, I don't know that I don't know if it's Alchemax or whatever, but it was those little beads that you put in hot water and you could mold it into stuff. I built a big cone over top of it coming off of the rock so it couldn't get light, and it had to leave its hole and walk out to get to the light. And it took a few days, but it finally left. And the first time I didn't make it big enough, and it like finally moved its way out, but his foot was still inside. So then I built a second cone on top of that cone that he had it was ridiculous, but he eventually left. But that was the only way I literally had to rock out upside down. Couldn't get over the life of me because his foot was so deep in the rock. But
I choose Marco rock specifically that doesn't have like holes too deep. Yeah. And if there's holes too deep, I just put putty in it. Just because I've been through that before where it just takes a pain to like get stuff off. Mm-hmm. So I use Marco, and then if anything looks like, you do want the grooves in them for them to feel secure, but anything that looks like too deep, like it's going to cause an issue, I will putty it up and just block that hole.
Interesting. See, I don't really like holes for fish, but if you don't have NEMS, I guess it's less of an issue.
Yeah, it's a 25-gallon NEM tank.
Yeah.
So far, I have like a Black Widow and a bunch of other rainbow NEMs in it, but I'm hoping to like just collect
cool NEMs,
some more stuff. Yeah. When I went to Worldwide Corals, I got a really cool NEM, but it didn't. There was something going on with the tank, and it didn't make it. And I've never seen one that color. I'm trying to get another one like that. I know. Ooh. Even the guys at the store were like, "We've never seen one like this before." And when you have like, something
thank you.
Tiny,
that's the worst. Like it's one thing if you kill like, I don't know, like a platy that is a color that everybody knows, but like when it's something that like everybody's like, "Oh, that's so unique." Oh.
Yeah, I called the store. I was like, "Hey, like something's going on." That other one, they're like, "Yeah, like the day after you left."
Oh, dang. So sad. Yep.
Yeah. I need something stronger than tea.
Yeah, lightweight.
I mean, you got some wine. I wonder if someone could 3D print something. Oh, let's cheers. Cheers. Cheers to
Cheers.
O.
I have the same glass. Not the polka dot one. I'll bring it next time. We'll be all matchy match.
I like matching. I wonder if someone could 3D print something so that you wouldn't have to like make the beads with that glue stuff. Because I know a lot of people trying to get rid or trying to get NEMs to move. Mm-hmm. If that would be something that would last longer. You
could, but the problem is there's cracks all around it, right? Where the plastic will mold perfectly to the rock, so you're eliminating all the ulterior escape routes. So you're forcing them to walk through your little tunnel.
Okay.
That's what I found, at least, because I did try a few, and they did poke out the sides and all kinds of things, but the foot was still planted, so you still couldn't get it, despite you thinking you had hope. It was like false hope for like a week until I finally just like made this over the top, oversized one. But I have those still. I don't know. They're somewhere in my office. I don't know where they're. One of my many shelves. But yeah, those things are super useful though for doing random stuff like that.
That's the one you can. That's the one you can reheat and reuse, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. You can reuse them, so they're super cool. Marine Depot used to sell them, so I don't know if Bulk Resupply picked them up or not. I'll have to look later.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah.
Okay, one of the questions that I totally didn't ask yet, someone asked in the chat. They're asking about how to place your power heads and being happy for acros as well as LPS, something along those lines. Basically, you place your LPS where the flow works for them. So if you kind of pick where you want your power heads, I tend to put my power heads in my tank are up high, and I have the LPS down lower below it, or further down the tank. So I mean, coral placement's probably the easiest way to deal with it. You can move your power heads, but usually, acros like high flow and LPS are kind of lower to medium flow.
Yeah, that's something that I haven't perfected, but the one thing I am is just be flexible with it. Like, sometimes you see people like, hey, I have two MP40s, so I'm going to stick one on the left and one on the right, and have them middle and opposite each other. Like, depending on your aquascape, just be flexible. Just play around with it. I'm still playing around with it. Even someone who's as experienced as Greg constantly plays around with his flow. So he started out with tunsies. I think he's doing MP40s. And if you ask him, he's like, I'm still
MP60s?
MP60s and a couple MP40s. But even if you ask him, it doesn't sound like he's even 100% sure. Like, that's the final placement. And plus, when stuff grows,
it changes.
You might have to move stuff.
So everyone puts their flow on the sides of the tank. If you have a blacked out background in space, like at least with MP40s, I really like putting them on the back of the wall, shooting forward. That way you don't see any pumps, and they're usually moving less space, so you kind of get more umph with less percentage. So other consideration for placement.
I tried that, and I think the LPS on the floor just didn't like the full force of the water off the glass. So I actually have two on the left, and the ones on the right are on the back. So it seems to be working for me.
Nice.
But I said,
the peninsula tank and blast it, and by the time it gets to the end, it's really lightweight.
Yeah, that's my strategy. Although
that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. What are you running for pumps on yours? And how long is your tank? I guess.
Say that again.
How long is your tank? And then what do you use for power heads and how high?
It's the Red Sea 650. So how long is that? 5 feet? 6 feet?
I don't know. One of the two.
Remember, one of the two. I'm sure someone in the chat will know. 63 inches, whatever that goes down to. So 5 feet. I have two MP40s. I have a Varios 8 that's running full force.
Yeah.
The what's the thing? The thing's called that
random flow generator, RFG.
Yeah, random RFG. Thank you.
Yeah.
People are like, you don't know what this is called? I was like, I probably have it on my tank. I just forgot the name. The RFG, I have two of those that split it off. So it's a Varios 8, and so that's shooting across the tank. And I did have the matte, what did I have? I bought it from O.
The Gyre XF130.
And I had that on, and I think it was too much flow, so I actually took it off just to see what happened. It surprises me how much water gets across this tank. Yeah.
That's good, though.
I've seen people put gyres on the side, going, and I've been impressed with that. For me, gyres, it's just too much to clean for me, just the maintenance. I'm a lazy. I have 4 MP40s, and I have a whole bunch of wet sides, and I just like to just pop them off and just,
That really is the best part. That and the battery backup.
Yeah. I mean, I had it on, my overflow, because the water box has this thing. I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. The overflow's in the center, and there's two slots that are perfectly spaced for the MP40s.
Yep.
So then I had that on the center because I was thinking that I needed more over the top, but I couldn't quite position it so that it would go over the top and come back around. I think it was just like hitting my scullies straight on, and they were not happy about it, so I took it off until I figured out where it should go. So as far as flow, I have no idea. I can't answer that question.
Fair enough.
It seems to be an ongoing thing. Like, it just seems, I just play around with it all the time. Like, stuff doesn't look happy. And I just think a mixed tank is like, from what I've learned,
it's trickier.
A mixed tank is trickier. Like when you have SP, like Greg has all SPS, he just blasts that. Like, he has so much flow going on, and yet he doesn't have any surface agitation. So his flows are, his pumps are further down in the tank, and they're moving a ton of water. It just doesn't, you know. So yeah, it's.
Yeah, so Alex G, I have two XF 250s for my frag tank, and they work really well to get general flow. I like the flow gyres, but yeah, I just hate cleaning them. That's the worst part.
They've gotten better since the first gen.
Have they?
I've had every gen gyre. This
ones.
one is the best. Still, just yeah.
Maybe I'll try one again one day.
Yeah, and then also, you know, it's like taking it off and taking it, like physically disconnecting it and taking it to the
wires.
It's just, yeah, it sounds. When I say it out loud, it sounds kind of snotty.
It's not though. Do. It's not because in the past I've been OCD with wire management, and they'll be all routed, and then I go to take it off. I'm like, how am I supposed to clean this thing? It's like a huge ordeal to like undo all the wires. So I just like hang a bucket off the side of the tank to like soak it, and it's so much easier to be like.
I redid the tank last year. When I started my tank in 2020, I was like, I'm gonna do wire management. And it's not like Devon neat, not like Devon neat, but it was okay. Everything was zip tied. And then I put the gyre on. Then I put the gyre off. Then I added more MP40s. Then I added like a Pax Bellum, and I changed Refugium, and I did a bunch of stuff. And then all of a sudden, like, I was like, yeah. Mm-hmm. I've gotten to the point now where I've made like these little wooden blocks, and I just stuff the wires behind it, and just like. It's just going
out of sight, out of mind.
My husband is my wire manager.
I'm not gonna lie.
He out the door and he stopped to look at me.
Yeah.
He does it really, really well. He's like, can y'all see this?
Can now. I like the little cabinets. Those look good.
Yeah, they're from IKEA.
Nice.
It was supposed to be like temporary, but I was gonna get something made from Kyle Elder.
Yep.
Was my plan, but these look so good. I'm like, and look what he did. Like,
that's nice.
And so he has like things attached up here, and he has like cable connectors, and he just told me what to do and where to go, and I was like, you're in charge. You tell me what to do. He's like, I'm never in charge. I'm like, I know. I'm like, enjoy it.
And I know that exact IKEA cabinet too. I don't know how you got it to. I just think I change stuff so much times. It's gonna look good day one. Like, I did use the Ecotech mounts, and then I mounted, and I changed lights, and then I took one off, and I put it on, and I changed from an XR30 to XR15. So it just got to the point where I just use my drill holes and just zip tie, because I'm like, next time I need to move power brakes, I just need to be able to cut zip ties. It starts out great, but then it ends up being like, if you think about the last year and a half. And again, I'm saying this out loud, and I feel horrible, but the amount of I've had Apex, added energy bars, then I went to the Hydros, and then I had a Trident, and I didn't, and then I have a Alcatronic, and it just return pump I changed. It just, you know, like when it's perfectly routed, and then I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So one thing that I did actually to make it easier, I should do this to other equipment, on the Clarity filter roller, because sometimes it's just like a pain to like pop it out, because I got like the custom one on the back of my sump. I cut the wire and I put in a barrel plug, so I can unplug it from the rest of the cable, the motor, and I don't have to like fish it back or twist the wire and all that jazz.
Everything.
Yeah, I agree. Like how nice would it be to have like a pop it off instead of going all the way back and plugging it at the source? Way nicer.
I got kids. And I live in an apartment, so for me, like, I have two motors, Dev. So I literally just unplug the motor with the rolled up thing for the Clarity, and just that goes somewhere where I'll take care of it later. And then the new motor, you just
You swap whole motor.
yes,
That-
because it's you know you gotta slice the thing.
He was lazy.
That is
when well, first my motor wasn't working and Ecotech did so
Uh-huh.
I didn't buy two motors. I
okay.
had
Okay.
a motor and it wasn't working, and I had you know, Paul at Reef Community Worldwide and Woody, so I had them like buy a motor and ship it to me. So when Ecotech fixed it one day, I was doing something, I'm like, oh, let me just put the new motor on instead of, because the Clarisy, sometimes the thing gets dry and you have to like take a razor blade and slice it off. It doesn't. So I was like, why am I sitting here doing this with a razor blade? I could do it later. Let me just pop the new motor on it. Yeah, it sounds nuts, but that's what I do.
That is amazing in overkill, but wonderful. I like it.
Yes.
Quick shout out, John. Thank you so much for the super chat. Boa Noit. My normal tuition fee. Much appreciated, John. But yeah, that is super awesome that you just swapped the motor. But if you're not as baller as though,
Slash if you don't have
If
one,
you-
but you got it.
yeah, if you put on a barrel plug or just like a little connector on it, then you can just unplug it and take it off, and it makes it way easier. And the other trick, because the bugger's always getting off the new roll, right? So what I do is I take a stapler and I poke it inside the hole, so I have something to push against, and I pull it. And it's still a bugger, but I can get it off that way. And then I use a stapler to staple the new roll and use the motor to feed it through. So I don't have to like get my hands all wet and take it all apart and stuff.
I feel like I've heard you mention the stapler trick like 4 times, but I don't think I've ever seen it. Is that like in a video somewhere?
I don't know if I did a dedicated video. It might have been part of a video, but I know I've done it at some point.
Yeah, I've gotten it from him.
Because I can't imagine what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I need a visual.
Literally take the edge of your old roll, take a stapler, and put like 3 or 4 staples to attach
Okay.
your new roll to your old roll. Then just hit the play button and let it pull it through for you, and then you just cut it and then attach it to the motor thing.
Now I get it. I don't think I was connecting that you were stapling the two together. I
Works.
thought you were doing something with the stapler to hold it.
Yeah, no, that's what I did to pull the roll off of the motor block. So you're half right on that one too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mixing up things.
Yeah, so if the motor is here, I'd be like poke inside the hole, and then I'd use that to like push it and then pull it. That's how I could get it off.
So someone could do that with like a PVC pipe or something.
Yeah,
Too.
you just need something in there to hold it so you can get that collar to slide off.
Yep. Yeah.
That makes sense.
I love my Clarisy though. I love the Clarisy. Like it's, I love the Clarisy. It's just, I don't know if what's happening, but mine gets really dry and crusty, and it doesn't slide. I've seen other people just slide it off, but mine, you got to take a razor blade and slice through it. But
I've
no
done that
problem.
once. Once I've done the razor. The rest of the time it slid off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe
Well,
it's just me. Like most of the time, it's me. So
Mhm.
maybe it's just me again.
Special. Hey, I've done it too, so it's not just you. Sometimes I don't know if it just encrusts or wraps too tight or who knows what it is. Too much tension. But
Yeah, I don't think, and this here goes another change. I don't think I'm putting enough flow through my Clarisy, so maybe it just sits there too long, or
Could be.
maybe it doesn't roll enough. Because my roll lasts me like a long time. They're like 3 months. How long? My roll lasts me a really long time. It gets really dirty, but it lasts me a really long time. So that's I hope my wife isn't watching, but that's a yes. Somebody says, "Oh, got some new lights." Yes, if you can see the reflection through my glasses, I got some ring lights.
fancy.
Ooh, yeah.
Hey, Greg. Greg's my favorite. Sorry.
Greg is pretty awesome.
I think we've mentioned him like, I've mentioned him like 10 times. So I guess he,
He heard his name calling. He's like, I've been summoned.
His ears were itching. Is that what they say, or is it burning?
I don't know.
His reef senses are tingling. I don't know. I'll take it. But
Oh, what did I just do? Okay. All right.
do you do filter roller, Brandy?
I don't think I do because I use the really thin mesh.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I don't know. So up until about 2 weeks ago, my nutrients were non-existent. This is a very new tank. I said it got wet in April 26th.
Yeah. Oh, you totally froze. You're building suspense right now.
freeze?
Oh, there you go. You're back. I thought you were just building
Okay.
suspense.
Okay. It was intentional. And totally planned. And the display, all but the centerpiece, is dry rock. I put a bunch of live rock on the bottom, but I think that it's just been absorbing. I think me and you were talking about this one day, weren't we?
I think so.
Whenever I realized my phosphates were through the roof, I was actually on the phone with and I was like, no, 2 days ago it was 0.03. And he's like, I'm telling you, check your phosphates. I'm like, there's no way. And I checked it, and it was like 0.4.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, that's up there.
Wait, that's high for you guys? Do you want to know what my...
0.4?
Beforehand. That's a huge jump.
Oh.
Right? Like, that's the difference, is it was a huge jump. And I had been feeding like every 2 hours, and I had no phosphates and no nitrates. So I think that all my rocks and stuff must have been just absorbing it all. So now I'm fighting with nutrients, but I have a algae scrubber, so hopefully that'll help. But I think I'm down to 0.15 now.
Well, let's get better. Better than 0.4.
Yeah, much better than.
Nice.
And it went up after the day that I talked to O, and I put phosphate E in, and I was like, "Be careful with that." And the next day it was even higher, and I was like, "Geez."
Question for you guys: how much phosphate E do you dose in your tank? Because you have 100 whatever. Yes.
Is phosphate E lanthanum chloride?
Yes, as bright well as
Okay.
lanthanum chloride.
Okay, I use phosphate RX.
Yep.
Well, I'll let Brenda uses phosphate E, so I'll let her.
So I think that it's a milliliter per gallon, and whenever I measured it, it was actually close to. Sorry, my goby's moving big rock. He just like took a rock like this big and moved it across the tank. He apparently was mad at it. I get distracted easily. I think it's a milliliter per gallon, and I measured it whenever I was adding water to this tank, and I was close to 100, like almost 170 gallons. So I think I added 13 milliliters, so slightly less than what it asked for, just to be safe.
Yep.
Next day it was even higher, so obviously I was fine with that. But yeah, I try and do a little bit less than what you're supposed to.
Okay, I don't have any on a doser, but I just like whenever I think about it, randomly just like dose a mil to my overflow, just because I've been trying to like slowly knock it down. So I was just curious, like how much you dosed at once into your tank.
I do it next to my skimmer. I don't know why I do it next to my skimmer.
No,
but
that's good. Some people actually dose it into the skimmer because it binds up the particles and then it'll take it out quicker.
Like in my head, I feel like I've read that somewhere, or maybe on one of your streams you said to do it in the skimmer. So I did it right next to my skimmer.
Okay, yeah, so that definitely works well, and I've seen some people dose it like through the lid of the skimmer so it falls down to the bubble tower.
Oh, that's really smart.
So that's another way you can do it. Ideally, you'd want to use like a fairly fine filter sock. I do mine in my overflow tower so that it hits the Clarice, which probably isn't quite fine enough, but then the skimmer chamber is right after it. And I also do super slow with it. So yeah, no, I'm always just curious to see other people's like what ratios and how much of an impact it has for them. So
I use the phosphate RX, and it works. I always underdose because I'm looking. I have my numbers here. 1.39, I think, a couple weeks ago, and I did like
1.39
Oh yeah, absolutely.
on your phosphate.
So I think so. You know, I have this thing where I did fish food, right?
Wait, what test did you use that went up that high?
Oh, do you want me to bring out my HANA checkers? So first I used the ultra low phosphorus, and it went to 0.6 something, which is the highest. So you know it's way over that.
Yeah.
Then I used the HANA checker phosphate checker, and then I used the salifert. So yes, it is there. I am not
60 gallon at one point. I got to 0.96, but that was the highest that my test would go, and I was like, I don't want to know how high it is, so I didn't buy anything better.
I think that's the highest I've ever tested. I think that's the highest I've ever tested. I think when I was making,
Oh, they're killing me.
I didn't know that the meter could go that high.
when oh yeah, it goes to 2.
I didn't either. I thought 0.96 was like maxed out.
Not even 0.22.
When I was doing the fish food this time, I think I overdid it because I think I told you, like, I just went and bought everything on BRS, in their fish food section. And then not only did I use like squid, everything, I also used the juices. Because I think I created like a batch of food called the nitrate busters I'm like, hey, if any of my friends have low nutrients, you can take this. And yes, but I think I just overdid it like with the fish food this time. So I think I'm going to stop feeding that and probably go back to some regular rods food and see but if anybody in the New York area, like I see, I don't know if Carlos is in the chat, but if anybody's in New York and you want some homemade fish food and you have low nutrients, I've got the food for you.
Birch, does water live at 1.39 phosphate?
That's really funny. I like that.
Yep. Yesterday, I have 0.126 as of yesterday. And a week ago was 0.16. So slowly getting it lower.
So after like doing the lanthanum and after doing phosphate RX, I am now down to a couple days ago 0.66. So I am bringing it down, just not because when you start dripping the phosphate RX, the water gets cloudy. Shumi says he's in New York, New Jersey. So Shumi, I know you work. I think you work in Manhattan. So
this hand comes to your curtain.
No,
sorry.
I think
Shumi is like my best friend, for the record.
Nice.
Oh.
Just because that's very important to know as a reaper.
It's good to have reef besties. It's very important business.
Shumi has a new tank, but Shumi, if you want some nitrate busting food, I got you.
Yep. Okay, now
you, like, go crazy with that though, right? Like you put all the stuff in your food.
I put everything, including the juices. I don't know why. So you know what? The
free
last
amino
time,
acids.
My wife helped me, and I think she was a little upset at me when I was making this fish food. So she like watched me make a mess and did not help me this time. So I think that's why I totally screwed the food up. Because last time she was the person that sort of prevented our house from smelling like fish for like a couple days. So I think yeah. But making your own food is cool though, because you will buy like maybe $80 worth of food. Like you buy all the dry food and stuff from BRS, and that's expensive, but you use that. In fact, a lot of the food I buy from BRS, like I'll give it away or throw it away before it expires, but you end up spending like, when I average it, I'll end up spending about $50 total, and that food will last me a year and a half, even though I'll give away a lot of it. So it's really economical and fun to make your own fish food.
I have not done that. I need to try that one day.
I want to do that too.
Yep.
Get your word of,
like I need to do that.
Just one word of advice: just get your own food processor and stuff. Do not use. It's a marriage saver. Like, get your own stuff. Do not use your.
I have a feeling my husband wouldn't care.
Yeah, it's usually the wives that care. Okay, so now here's two question on this one. You get your own. If you're buying like mysis and stuff from the like lakes and stuff, probably get your own. If you're like shopping at the seafood market and mixing it in, you might be able to get away with it. So I think it depends.
It smells like fish. I don't know.
Yeah, but what if you cook normal food that are fishy in there? What if you're making like shrimp souffle or something? I don't know. Same thing.
You know what? That's what my wife says, and she's the boss. I just go with what the boss says.
I would trust you on that one. I get in trouble if I touch anything kitchen related for anything fishy related, so I understand. I have all my own set of everything.
I mean, people probably might not like this. I know people are weird. Maybe not this group of people. My husband's a big hunter, and so he grinds his own meat and makes all the sausages and everything. And we don't buy meat because he uses
provides.
Yes.
Yeah.
Provides physically. So we have like all of the grinding stuff already.
Yeah.
And I feel like that would work really nicely for the fish food. I don't know if he would want me to use. That'd be interesting. I wonder if it would make the deer meat and the stuff taste like fish.
So in the chat, Odell, hopefully I say that right, just rinse it with lemon juice and it'll get rid of the smell. Might be worth a try. It's an acid, so maybe it does just like eat it up or whatever. There you go.
I had a friend in Canada that used to give us some caribou. So I love some curry caribou.
Nice. There, fresh anything is always better. It's
Agreed.
Good. Yep.
But people get creeped out by it, so
yeah, that's a solid trade-off. So in the chat, a couple people ask about dealing with aiptasia, and if it's in your system, can you ever get it out? It is definitely trickier to get it out. It's easier to manage it than to get rid of it out. Like, I know I've had the battle with like aiptasia and stuff, which, okay, aiptasia X, I find I don't really feel it works. It feels like it just spreads it. In fact, I actually used it on someone I was trying to grow aiptasia for Bergias. I was like, ha ha ha, I will get you where it works. And then aiptasia I find works well. Gluing over top it with super glue also works pretty well. Basically, you want to encapsulate it so it can't spread. But realistically, having something to manage it is going to be your biggest thing. I have way too much aiptasia in my frag tank because there's nothing in there that eats it. I did add some Bergia, but I also have a wrasse, so most are probably expensive snacks. I put half in my sump to give them, like, hopefully a safe place. But my big tank, I had a bunch in there, and I was chasing it down with aiptasia, and I got rid of all the big ones. And then I also added my copper band that used to be my frag tank to the main tank, and now I have, like, no aiptasia in there. If I see them, they're super tiny in a crack somewhere, but there's, like, none at all anyway. So having something to manage it goes a long way. So
yeah, I usually just do... I found somewhere where I got peppermint shrimp really, and what I do is I tend to like, I've been doing this like every 2 years, not with this tank, but I just go like 30 peppermint shrimp. I don't try to like I'm going for like the military method. You just overwhelm the enemy and just like, you don't give them any chance. So when I've tried with 1 or 2 peppermint shrimp, it tends not to. But when you put a group of 30, if one starts eating it, the rest of them, and then I try to move them to other tanks. But I think for my kids' tank is 25 Lagoon, and I think I'm going to get Bergia for that. I've also just set up a little mangrove tank right next to my desk, and I mean, the sand has been in there for 2 days, and I already see a bunch of aiptasia growing out of the sand. And that sand was, hold on, this sand was dead.
Yeah.
In the fish store, sitting in a bucket, that when I opened the bucket, it stinked. Like the guy who told, when I was scooping out sand from it, the guy said, I had to take that out in the street, like to scoop it out of the fish store, like take it around the back. And then all I did was add mangroves. Like there's no rock, there's no anything, and there's a bunch of aiptasia coming out. Like from where I'm sitting, it's like a 5-gallon Ultim tank. I can count like just eight or 10 aiptasia. Just so where did they come from? Well,
they had to come from your sand, so.
One cell and you've got aiptasia. They can reproduce from one cell. I just have decided that I do Bergia, or however they're said. I'm going to keep saying Bergia because I like that way to pronounce it. Every 6 to 8 months, and it's just going to be part of my tank maintenance. I bought some a couple of months ago, and I'm just now seeing aiptasia again. And I've not had any chemical work, any animal that I've purchased to try and eat that also ended up eating other corals, and I've tried peppermint shrimp multiple times. They ate my aiptasia, and they also ate my stylocynia and my acans, and then I got multiple filefish. My filefish, the last filefish I had ate every brain coral I had ever purchased, which was like heartbreaking. All my pavias, all my platies, all my everything overnight. And you know, it was a small tank, so it probably wasn't that many, but I had to start all over with my collection, which was really sad.
That does suck.
So, so I just won't even try anymore. It's not worth it.
I got a copper band, and he was eating aiptasia and eating at the store. Came to my tank, wouldn't eat. I got a filefish that was only eating aiptasia at the fish store. Came home, wasn't eating it. So I've just decided, like, let me not use the word killed. I failed at getting Copperman is one of my favorite fish, and it's one of my wife's favorite fish. And I failed at getting, the first 2 or 3 Copperband butterflies I had, like I was so lucky with them. Got them to eat, but now I think that's why I just go the Bergia / peppermint. And again, I don't go with 1 or 2. I go with the wait until they're on sale for like $5 and just buy like whatever, like you can do
Army
shipping with it.
Now I do have them in my sump.
Yeah.
forgot about that. I have arrow crabs, I have hermit crabs, I have Halloween crabs, I have peppermint shrimp, I have all the things that can eat all the coral
In the sump?
potentially in the sump. So hopefully the sump never gets like crazy, and hopefully can kind of like keep it under control. And they're all, I put them in like the day I put water in the tank, and they're still there and happy, and I've never replaced any of them in 4 months.
Yeah.
Like that sounds like, it's been 4 months, but they seem to be doing pretty well.
Yeah,
Nice.
Peppermint shrimp survive really long. They're just very cryptic. Like you don't see them. So when I forgot, yeah, I forgot like a couple months ago I was doing something. I think I needed to get like some chromis that were really going like preventing me from adding wrasses. Weird, like regular blue-green chromis. So I needed to take out like my rocks in order to catch them. And I remember like seeing so many peppermint shrimp. I mean, I killed because I didn't realize they were hiding in the rocks. So when I put the rocks down, they kind of dried out a little bit. But I was really surprised, like how many peppermint shrimp were in there after months. But it's probably why I just thought they ate the aiptasia and it went away. But it's probably that's why I don't have an aiptasia issue in my main display.
Yeah, my copper band definitely takes care of it for in there. I'm 50-50 copper bands. I had one amazing, wonderful. The other one just disappeared one day. I mean, I have no idea what happened to him.
But I also don't have any of the things that Brandy and you just mentioned that they eat. I don't have anything like that. So that's probably why even the fleshy stuff, like the fleshiest stuff I have is probably like a pectinia.
Yeah.
I don't have really anything fleshy in that tank. So yeah, it's all LPS and SPS. So there's nothing.
Your tank isn't as tempting.
It's not as yummy. I mean, every peppermint I've had ate aiptasia, but they also ate other things. So I've looked at the morphology. I think it was the right one. Shumi said you have to get the right one. I'm fairly certain it was the right one, but like I have videos of it picking the polyps out of the Stylosenia and eating it. It also ate the aiptasia. They also ate that. He also ate my blastos. He also ate...
the question, did he eat the aiptasia first?
There was still aiptasia in the tank. He was like mixing around, like he was a buffet.
Okay.
Like, I don't blame him. Like he had a little bit of aiptasia, a little bit of blastos, a little bit of Stylosenia, a little bit of that,
A little variety. You got to mix up the taste buds, Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I see a conversation, Dev, like, I don't know if you're down there about par meters. I did end up getting like the par meter from BRS, and it's one of this when you buy it and then and I got through the deal before they changed it, so I'm not sending it back. Like you pay for it and then you'll get like you'll get most of your refund if you send it back. But I just love having a par meter.
It's handy.
I don't know. Again, I know Shumi's is in New York, so if Shumi actually wants to use my par meter, it's a Senai 510, I think, or 520.
Apogee.
Yeah,
510 is Apogee. Senai doesn't have a number.
It is. I like it.
I've spent so much money on renting par meters. I did the same thing Greg said he did. I bought one of the wet tested ones. I'm waiting for it to come in. Should be here any day.
Oh, I would have totally like shipped you mine and you ship it back when you're finished. Like
But see, I'm just doing that. Like, and the amount of money and stuff I've spent on shipping, and like my club has one. I've used it probably 2 or 3 times. Praveen has one. Praveen's never charged me for it, but I have to drive to his house, which is just down the road. So it's not that big of a deal, but it's always like he's got corals coming and I'm trying to like hurry up and do it. And I've rented from BRS multiple times. We've shared a group, multiple people like renting and sharing it among ourselves. I'm just going to buy one. I've probably spent $300 in renting them at this point and shipping them places. So I bought one of the wet tested ones.
It's nice. It's definitely nice to have. And then like other people have done it. I'm just like, oh yeah, give me a frag. You can bore it. You just get free corals.
And then also I'm thinking, once we get back to some normalcy in life, I think I want to go see people's tank, and I think I just having a par meter and just seeing, like, we all want to know, like, just seeing what someone keeps something at. I just thought it would be cool to just have it. I did test. Have you ever tested the Senai versus the Apogee?
Okay, biggest things. Okay, if you want to borrow one or whatever, I mean that's obviously your cheapest. If you want to buy one, your cheapest option is the Senai, and it's like two something. I don't know, it's $200, $300, two something. I don't know how much is it. I gotta look. I don't remember.
200 just for the meter.
Okay, but the downfall is you need a laptop, right? You need software. You need a laptop. I haven't owned one, but I borrowed one off a buddy for like 6 months before I gave it back. So I had one for a while. The one annoying thing is it was linked to an account, so I had to like trick it to like make the program work, which was kind of annoying. So if you want to lend to someone, it's more of a pain in the butt. That's the downfall of the Senai. It's cheap for a power meter. I mean, that's obviously its plus side. The one other consideration is it's very dependent on like the angle of it. So
Yes.
if it's you want it straight. If it's at an angle or tilted, then you're not going to have as accurate of a reading. So you got to keep it fairly horizontal. So that's the other big consideration with it. Having a standalone one's nice is because you have the screen. I mean, they cost more money. They're a little more accurate. Realistically, do we care if it's a little more accurate? I mean, it gets you in the ballpark, so it's probably not as big of a deal. Like I have the MQ510 as well, which is more tuned for blue LEDs, which is the advantage. They have a cheaper model. I don't know if it's 510. I can't remember the model names. But anyways, it's cheaper, but it's not as dialed for blue LEDs. So it's a little bit of a trade-off, but they'll get you in the ballpark. So I don't know.
I think what Jake said, one is tuned for air and one is tuned for water.
Yeah.
I think what I've seen Jake Adams said. I have both, and you pretty much
water and which one is air? I just got the Apogee 510.
I think that's what I have.
Water. That's
I have
the water.
to look now. It's bugging me.
That's the water. I pretty much.
Bob has the Apogee 2 something. I don't know what it is.
Who has
Probably
that?
the 230. Reef Beta said Apogee M230.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the 230 is the yeah, that you need a laptop. Which one is that, Dev? It's the 510, right?
Yeah, 510. But
Yeah.
This is nice because it's all built in. You get an instant reading.
Love it. I
Yes.
love that thing. I've played with that thing so much. Like I didn't know I would have so much fun with a power meter.
Yes.
I like the Senai. I think having the like web server is like expensive, but what I do like about like the Senai is I get a lot of use out of it because every time I set up a tank or I'm cycling something, I buy slides and I use it to know what ammonia is. Or when I'm leaving out of town, it's something you drop in and it alerts you when it goes out of water, or you get ammonia alerts if a fish dies.
Yeah. I could never get over buying the slides for it, though. So I haven't used
not every month. Not every
I
month.
don't know anything about this. I feel like you need to send me some information,
Yeah, you could totally borrow my Senai if you want to play with it and just get a handle on it. But yeah, I think there was a controller that came out that used the Senai, and the crazy thing about it, it was cost you 10. What was it? The name of that controller?
Which one? Oh, the one that was supposed to come with it?
Yeah, it came with a Senai.
It was like it was more directed at freshwater, but worked for both. What was it called?
Yeah, I don't remember.
I talked to them.
So fast.
I had so much information.
It came.
It had a
came
light,
when,
like
yes.
Night Rider light across the front.
Can
Anyways,
I
yeah.
Actually,
throw this out here?
producer.
Can I for just 1 second? Time out.
Sure.
Reefers have so much knowledge
Yeah.
that the scientists have not caught up with.
Mm.
Like I feel like there's such a focus on like specific things. Like if you're a coral scientist, like you're a like specific species coral scientist, and like the ability to see the overall picture by reefers, it just boggles my mind. I love hearing all this stuff.
It's very well-rounded reef knowledge.
Oh, Felix.
Yeah.
Felix. Yeah.
Felix. Yeah, that thing was not very good. Not a good product. I hope I can say that on Devin's stream and I won't get him in trouble.
You can say
but that
whatever
was
you
not
want.
a good product. Felix. But Devin, the Knight Rider thing, that was like the production video. Like the final version did not have that. So basically, let me, because Brandy looks kind of lost. So Brandy, basically what we were talking about, the Senai, freshwater guys made a controller, which is basically like, this is not what it is, but imagine you take like a Raspberry Pi, and so it has USB ports, and it reads certain things. You can like turn some outlets on and off, and then you have a Senai plugged into it that reads pH, ammonia, things like that. But the Senai is really expensive to run because you have to replace the slides every 30 days, and it costs $10. versus, so you think the total cost of ownership of a Senai, if you want to use it to monitor, that's going to be like really expensive. You might as well get an Apex.
Yeah.
You should bring it with you to New York so we can play with it in one of the vendors' tanks, maybe.
Chicago, you mean?
Yeah, Chicago.
Oh,
bring it to Chicago.
Here's a pro tip for you guys, because I remember looking at this. So Senai sells, because it needs to talk to a computer basically if you want alerts and stuff when you're at home. So you can either have a laptop or a computer close by running it, but if you don't, they sell a little web server, but it's really expensive. It's not cheap. So a cool thing that I found is like a USB over network type of thing. So you can use, I believe it was a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino, something you installed it on, and it would basically, so you didn't have to have your computer by the tank. I thought it was kind of cool. It was like USB over RJ45 adapter or something like that. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think Thomas from BRS did a video on it. Another cool thing about the Senai is if you just put it into one of those, like, let's say iPhone plugs, USB plugs, put it in the tank, it'll actually record the data. It just won't upload it to the cloud until you. So let's say you're doing something and you just want to know, like, hey, did ammonia spike during my cycle? You can plug it into the computer later, and it'll upload the data.
Kind of cool.
Just like a data logger in a way.
Yep. So I
have the same problem you have. I like gadgets.
Yep.
Which is why I have an Apex and a GHL on my tank. And if I could get a Hydros, I would have a Hydros on my tank also, because I like the stuff.
I have the 3 across 2 tanks.
I like knowing how it works, and I didn't even know this thing was a thing, and I'm disappointed.
It is not a controller, because people keep comparing it to the Apex.
I like a controller. I like monitors. I want something that monitors stuff. I don't care if anything's controlling.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a Hydros, and when I did switch from the Apex to the Hydros, I was like, I'm going to keep this simple. It's a simple thing. I am maxed out on Wi-Fi devices now. I have 8, and I have more sitting that I haven't controlled yet. So I pretty much have, and this thing has taken everything I've thrown at it. I've been really I've been really impressed over the last year or so using the Hydros, because I thought it was going to be like, hey, it's a really simple thing. It's not going to, like I tell people, I still think if you're going to do like a crazy setup, advanced, still do an Apex. But I don't know. I think I was talking to DC Reefer yesterday, and I was like, I really want to set up auto water changes. And I was like, hey, I can get the cheapest. But the one thing, since I got rid of my Apex, the one thing that I'm fearful about water changes, I need a way to turn stuff on and off if the barrel gets low.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, hey, you can just buy like a Control 2 starter pack for $200 to get a couple optical sensors, plug some Versa pumps into them, and just have that, like, you just have a dedicated controller that's just doing water changes for you in a closet. And then when it gets low, it'll, turn off like the Versa pumps. And I'm like, you're a genius. Like I was telling myself, like, you're a genius. Like, that is, I had that moment of like, yeah. Yeah.
It's probably true.
I know. All this, like, I really do like the Hydros. I'm a big fan. I know people, like, I've heard, and I was a little fearful at first. Like, I didn't just rip my Apex off. Like, I dipped my toe in and slowly got more comfortable. But I've heard people say, like wireless is not reliable. And I always say, like, I'm a remote worker. I've been living my life wirelessly for like years. Like I use a Google Wi-Fi, and it only comes with one Ethernet plug on the back of it. Like everything in my house is Wi-Fi.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw some caveats out here.
Sure.
A wire will be more reliable than wireless. Now, wireless can also be extremely reliable, but it depends if you have a decent wireless, right? If you're using like the free one you get with your ISP, they're usually shoddy and not as good. If you have an aftermarket one that's like a decent one, then you're gonna have a lot more success. So it depends. Like I had like a really like fancy, not anymore, but at one point it was like a nice Asus router, and it's been great for years. But then recently it started having like weird issues, not to reboot it and different things. So I finally just like upgraded all my stuff to like newer gen stuff. But as long as you have decent Wi-Fi, then it works well.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I have nothing to say, but I'm going to agree 200% with you. Like, if you're having Wi-Fi issues, like at certain areas of the house, or something is like
you start a YouTube bit or a Skype call and you're jittery.
You like when we started? Hey guys.
wow.
That's what it was like, for reals.
Wow.
We did a practice run and O had to restart his computer because
Yeah, but it was the computer.
I love you, O. I love you. Cheers. It's the wine talking. And
I need something stronger.
Lightweight tea.
Yeah. I've heard people say like they wouldn't trust. Like I live my life wirelessly.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, look at our cell phones are wireless. Like, there's tons of stuff that are wireless, right? But I just want to throw the caveat there, because anytime I've seen random issues and stuff, it's usually because they're using, like, the cheap provided router that's never very good.
That's a good call, Devin, and I'm glad you said that, because I've never quite I never use, like, I have an IT background.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, I never use, like, I had my cable company here in New York is Optimum. Mm-hmm. And I literally have to fight and like, I don't want your router, like just send me. And then every time you have an issue and you have to call into an issue, they were, you know, like the sales guy, like the tech guy would say, hey, if you use our router, we would support it. I'm like, no. Like,
not using that garbage.
Yeah. and another thing that I have to just say is a lot of times when we, like people say wireless isn't reliable or wireless goes down. Mm-hmm. A lot of time when wireless goes down, it's your actually internet that goes down, not necessarily a router. Mm-hmm. So I know, so a lot of times it's maybe your internet service provider goes down, not your internal Wi-Fi.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Although I have had some weirdness on mine, I have to reboot it once in a while. And I actually realized it was something on my network trying to act as like a DHCP server and give out addresses, so something was conflicting. Anyways, I just got mad and like completely like redid it, rewired it all, and stuff in my attic running wires to everything. And I actually ran one to my Apex too, finally, after being on Wi-Fi for like 5 years. It's wired now. So I went hardcore wiring the other day.
I had an extender, and I think when the Hydros first came out, the Hydros did not like the extender. And I think I unplugged it. I
really gonna kill me. I'm sorry, y'all. He always makes me laugh.
He's bringing up the giggles. It's coming.
I'm trying not to.
Yeah, I really like. I like all these. I think each controller has its advantages. But I like how we're all using different things. Like B is totally gone into the GHL. Like she's like gone down the route.
I still have my Apex on my system, but I love my GHL. I love my GHL. It's running everything. I hate saying this because I hate, like, it's not me bad mouthing, but my doser has given me so many problems.
Which one?
I would not.
What doser?
The Neptune doser, the DOS.
Okay.
It I've sent you the video, right?
Yes, but don't get me in the middle of it. Yes, but yes.
Just saying, there's people who've seen this. Like
no.
I have 2 DOSs, mm-hmm. and one of them wasn't plugged into anything. And I kept hearing it run, and I went to go check to see what was going on. And the one, luckily, it was the one that wasn't like connected to anything that was dosing. It was just empty, and it was just going.
Really?
And I was, what?
Yeah.
And I unplugged it.
I've been requesting that feature for years for it to memorize the programming, not need to be plugged in.
Yeah.
Okay. So I unplugged it. It still kept going. I unplugged the USB thing. So the power, the USB, I unplugged both, and I would plug them in, and they'd start going. Just the one side. Luckily, it was the side that wasn't connected to anything, because my tank would have crashed. Like, it totally would have crashed.
Yeah, no kidding.
I looked in the settings. There was nothing that could have accidentally been telling it to turn on for some reason, because I had never used that head. It had always been nothing. So it wasn't like it was overused or anything either. And I got frustrated in the video, and I just tapped it. I spanked it, and it stopped. And like 20 minutes later, it started again, and I would go and spank it, and it would start again.
Did you ever figure out what it was?
No, I ended up just taking it off the tank because I took them all off the tank because I was so scared to use them.
Yeah.
And I emailed them, and they didn't really give me a satisfactory answer. So I'm scared to use them.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it was an electrical short. If I was to pull it apart, I'm sure there's a short in there.
Yeah, probably.
Did you say, you know what? I was a guest like a month or 2 months ago on Derek's. I just kept going through EV8s and getting them repaired. Yeah, and then Derek told me, like, hey, there's a problem with, like, energy bars where, like, I don't know if it's some kind of board or something in it that just keeps failing, and it's a known issue, and I did not know. There's actually a guy in the New York area, Deb. I'm not going to blow up his spot, but he will drive around and fix your EV8 for, like, $45. You know, because if you send it into Neptune to get it repaired, like, I think it's like $100+ for shipping, and this guy will come to your house and repair the part, like, do on-site EB8 repairs, EB8 32 repairs for like $40-$45.
That's all right.
And so like you see like producer Reef earlier in the chat, like last week he was in New York, he's in Vegas, and I was helping him like hook up his tank before he left town. We plugged like the dose in, he pressed the button to make sure the heads were working, walked out the room, the energy bar failed. It's the same issue that they have where you're turning the outlets on and the lights go on and off, but you don't hear the click. Like that is, Producer says a $5 part. I contacted the guy and I need to work out a time, but there's a guy, $50, 45 or $50. He'll drive to you, or you can meet him somewhere. And he'll fix that part. And you don't have to open a ticket. Don't have to ship it to Neptune. By the time you ship it to Neptune and open a ticket, you're already almost at $50 anyway.
Yeah.
So
I mean, like my experience with the DOS was, I told them, I sent them the video of me smacking it and it stopped.
What'd they say?
They told me I could ship it to them and that the repair cost could cost up to $300.
You're like, a new one's cheaper?
That's what it cost.
I'm like, I could have just bought a new one, right? And I was just like shocked. I thought they would want to see it just to figure out what was going on, right? Like, why did this happen? And because my husband designs electronic stuff too. I love how I'm doing air quotes. He designs speakers and stuff.
Nice.
And so if something goes wrong with his equipment, he wants someone to ship it to him so he can look at it and figure out what happened. And that's what I expected them to do. Like, I don't know. I thought it would be like messaging my husband.
You should have asked him. He could probably fix it for you. I bet you could open it up. Be like, oh yeah.
Probably. Yeah, 100%. But it makes me nervous. Like, I don't want something that's just I'm so happy it was the head not connected to something.
Yeah.
Because I would have been so upset. I got really lucky that was the head that decided to just, and I mean, it was just like going and going and going and going. And
you saying that just lets me, this is why, like, I will pay a premium for like Ecotech equipment, because 9 to 5, like, you can call on the phone and like talk to someone instead of doing it through a ticket. And I have to be honest and say, like, you know, with like the BRS purchase of like Neptune, that's probably one area you're going to see like change immediately. Just BRS has great customer service, and I think that's going to filter down. Like, hopefully they'll have a number where you can call, and you know, like I called Ecotech today, and within 5 minutes, like, Tim remembered me when I called like a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
And so Tim answered the phone. I don't know his full name, but thank you, Tim, if you're watching this. But Tim answered the phone and was able to talk me through. He's like, hey, is it the same shipping address last time? Boom, boom, done, issue, like, ticket closed. And I got a survey that says, did you like my service? I'm like, heck yeah, I love your service. So nice. I love that. Like, there's someone you can call 9 to 5. And I just don't like the ticket issue. Like, if I'm having a problem with my Apex, like, my tank is probably dying or something bad is going. So I need to know, like, at least between the hours of 9 to 5, I can call someone. So,
I mean, I'm going to say this, and Vinny's probably going to get mad, but anytime, I don't know if it's like special treatment. It might be special treatment. I suspect it's not. But anytime I've had an issue, I've messaged Vinny, like, expecting he would call, like, message me in the morning, and he's always like,
wait. You personally message Vinny, like that is
From
that is some clout. That is some clout.
on Facebook. Like, is that clout or is that me being like presumptuous?
I don't know anybody. Like I don't know people higher up at these companies. Like you know what?
I don't know. I met him. I met him in Orlando, but he didn't know who I was. Like nobody knew who I was in Orlando. Like I don't know what happened in the last like month. Like apparently people like me laughing, but yeah, I just sent him a message on Facebook thinking he was probably asleep, and he like messaged me immediately, and I was like, oh. Okay, I was like, you can wait till you wake up. He's like, good. Like, he told me he wasn't asleep, so maybe.
He was dreaming GHL. He's just waiting for it.
So I'm glad.
All your YouTube videos, Dev.
No, I've actually bugged Vinny a few times too, but then I figured it out by the time I responded. So I was like, ah.
So I'm glad like that's gotten better. But my experience with like, I think it was Macna, and I was really annoyed with my GHL doser at the time. Like something was happening, and I was like, I was burning. Like Phil, Reefkeeper, and I were burning through heads, and I was really annoyed that like I had to connect it to Windows because I'm a Mac user. Like,
yeah,
I literally had to go buy a copy of Windows and install it on Boot Camp to hook up my GHL doser, and I was really annoyed with that. And I remember Macna, I think he was the owner of GHL or the guy in Europe.
Yeah,
and I'm like, hey. I'm really like, I'm a little bit annoyed. Like, I got to do this. I got to hook it up to Windows. He's like, oh, no, you don't have to do that anymore. You can do it. So I'm like, really? Show me how. And he looked at it and he's like, oh, yeah, you have to update your software. And I'm like, okay, how do I do that? He's like, you have to hook it up to Windows.
After you update it, then you can do other stuff.
It's not that funny.
Rob, what? I will say, when my ATK failed, Neptune sent me a new one like almost immediately. Like it's probably one of those things where it's like my cat's running around like crazy. It's like anything, right? Like I shouldn't just be like a jerk and be like, oh, they were crap to me. Probably just depends on who you're talking to. Like if you get someone who's new and doesn't know what they're doing, like they probably aren't going to be as quick to help. But when my ATK failed, they immediately sent me a new one. But the dosering thing just makes me nervous. Like I've spent so much money on my corals and stuff, and like it makes me really nervous that a head that's never been used failed.
Yeah,
and not because I like the hydros now doesn't mean like I hate Neptune. I'm just a fan of the hydros. I'm just a fan of the hydros.
Personal experience, the chance of it happening to someone else is probably slim, right? It just. If something's dosing, like it needs to dose what I tell it to, and not more and not less, and not just continuous running where I can't turn it off. Like I couldn't turn it off.
Yeah.
You probably voided your warranty by smacking it, like especially sending them the video. You probably warranty.
Knocked some sense into it though. It stopped.
Yeah. Like I don't care. Yeah. Like it's sitting in a box right now. I didn't send it back to them, and like I don't care that much. I just like I wanted them to like it's got to be an electrical fall, right? Like I don't know. It just makes me nervous. Sorry, I'm not trying to badmouth anybody. I'm just saying that was my experience.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah. I've dealt with them a couple times for warranty things, and they've been pretty good. So.
Yeah, I know the Apex guy that handles New York area, and he's helped. Like, yeah, it's good. But I just, like I said, I just prefer that.
Who is it? Is it Tom that's in the news? I adore Tom. He's freaking amazing. I'm sure if I was to message Tom, but that's part of my thing too. Like you shouldn't have to know which right person to message. Like
Tom actually.
Tom
actually helped. Tom used to work at Manhattan Aquariums, and he helped me buy I remember I had a heater that failed, and I walked in and I was looking for a Ranco controller because that's what everyone said. Like a heater crashed my tank, and Tom was like, check out the Apex. Like it's like I think a Ranco was like $200, and at the time they had an Apex light. He was like, you can spend a little extra money and you can control stuff, and I was like, cool. So Tom's been my Apex guy since, and that was when I was really young into the hobby. So Tom's like, not just works in the industry, like he has really nice reef tanks too. So
I met randomly at Worldwide Coral Like that's how I met him. We were standing there, you know, the big tank in the back. We were both standing there looking at it, and he said hi to me. I had no clue who he was, and we sat there and we talked for. He is a good guy. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lives in my like Tom.
He's a good guy. I like Tom too.
Sorry.
No. When I was up at a couple years ago at one of the Canadian shows, he was up there too. So I'm like, Tom, you're everywhere.
Is he?
The Niagara show. This is a couple years back now.
Yeah, he's the East Coast guy, so anything that covers this. And when Tom is helping with my Apex, like I'm amazed. Like I used to do IT, and Tom is like doing stuff. He's like, tell Ned this, and I'm like, dude, like he's so good with just technology, period, not just the Apex. I'm like, damn, I respect it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can any controller detect stray electricity? No, I don't think any of them actually detect it. You gotta like poke a multimeter in your tank to check it.
Put your hand in.
Just lick it. No, don't do that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, don't electrocute yourself. But if you put a multimeter, the negative into the ground, like make sure multimeter's on like the AC or whatever the proper setting is, then put into the ground, and then you poke a probe into your tank. If you have stray electricity, you'll see a reading jump up on your meter. So if anyone's tried it, I'm not 100%, feel free to correct away, but from my understanding, that's the easiest way to check for it. I've never used...
His hand has always worked. I agree. My hand has always been able to tell. But my torch is always... Any euphilia tries to attack me too, so I don't know if I'm more sensitive or what.
Does it sting you? Like, some people get a rash from touching corals. Yeah?
It doesn't sting me, but you can like... I can feel it stick to me. I totally went off topic. I'm sorry. Don't have me on a live stream.
You're doing a fine job.
They stick to me, and you can also see them sticking to me. Mm-hmm. And I was asking the guys at Worldwide Coral about it, and they said that women are more likely to have the euphilia attached to them than men. So I don't know if it's just that we're so much more beautiful, or...
Women are beautiful creatures. I understand.
I thought that was going to go in like a scientific direction, but...
No.
Keep you guessing. Sometimes it goes crazy scientific, sometimes it's just nonsense. Most of the time it's nonsense.
Special blend.
Someone asked a question about if two MP40s are okay for, I think it's a Waterbox 7225. Is that what you have, Randy? Because I'm looking for a 7225.
That's what I have.
Oh, that's what you have. Do you think two MP? Oh, I'm going to shut up now.
Say that again. Oh.
Like someone was asking, would two MP40s be good on each side of a 7225?
Okay. So 7225, I have the Peninsula 7225. You could put one at each side. That would work. Personally, I wouldn't want anything at the end of my Peninsula. So I overkilled it and did two MP60s on the overflow wall, like blasting down the tank. Just because I didn't want any pumps on the other side. But
how long is that tank? Sorry.
6 feet. Foot longer than yours. Yeah.
A little bit longer than mine. Okay.
Yeah. Just like... So, yeah, you could totally put a pump at both ends of it, and that would definitely work well. My original plan was going to just do MP40s, but then, I don't know, my side overkilled the 60s. Dan, I worked at NASA for 2 summers. I still have no idea how to use a multimeter. I will teach you. Yep. 9-volt battery to the tongue. Yeah, that's a lovely, weird taste. Done that in my younger days.
Someone tricked me into doing that as a kid.
Did you learn your lesson?
I did.
Yeah. Full science.
So I used to teach high school physics, and I would tell them specifically, do not do this, because I knew all the boys were going to immediately put it to their tongue.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm being sexist, but it was never a girl who'd be like, oh, I'm going to test it and see if she's right or wrong.
So you told them not to do it, knowing that they would do it. So you wanted to teach them a lesson.
I don't know what I was doing.
And afterwards, you're like, I told you so.
I teach teachers now. I teach science teachers, and I've learned to tell them not to make a rule until they need the rule.
Okay, I have a question. What is your actual job now? You teach teachers science.
Yeah, I work at UNCC, University of North Carolina at Charlotte. And so people who are going to get their degree to be a science teacher, I teach them.
Oh, that's cool. Nice.
What do you do in your spare time, like Brandy? What do you do in your spare time?
Live stream and talk about reef tanks?
No, I mean, like, are you working on something? Are you higher education or?
Are you asking about my dissertation?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm also working on my PhD. So
Nice.
I do a lot of writing in my spare time and writing book chapters and journal articles. And obviously, I need to spend more time on my dissertation and less live streams. And
Enough of that trash talk.
all you guys will call me doctor one day.
Excellent.
Oh no! Why am I saluting? You don't salute
Dr. Fountain. Now,
Dr. B.
Dr. B, perfect. Now, just out of curiosity, dissertations and all this stuff, is anything reef tank related or microbiology? Yes. Okay.
Did you know that?
No, I'm just assuming.
So I actually had to change my dissertation topic. I was originally creating a instrument to measure a teacher's effective technology use, which involved going into schools and taking videos of teachers who are actually using technology to blend the theory to practice, like what's actually happening versus what we're saying should happen.
Yeah. And
then COVID happened, and the schools won't let anybody in. So had to change topic. So now I'm actually, it took me like a few months to figure out what I was going to switch to. So what I'm working on now, my dissertation is on the development of knowledge through leisure activities. And I'm using reefing as the avenue to explore that. So hopefully before long, I'll be sending out messages with asking people to interview with me.
Huh, very cool.
Is Shumi going to get one?
Probably. No? Yeah.
I don't know who's going to get it. I will probably do a mixture of selective collection of data where because I want a variety of people who are new to the hobby, people who haven't really gotten into all this social stuff, people who are more on the have been doing it for years. I want people who have a science career because of reefing and changed their career because of reefing. So there's a couple of different things I'm going to be looking for. So it depends.
That's pretty cool. Nice. It is true though. It makes you extremely diverse having a reef tank, especially if you like creating and building or, getting into the weeds and figuring out why stuff works. There's, you're amateur scientist level at some of this point, which is crazy.
Yeah. I don't even think it's amateur. I feel like a lot of people who are reefing are legit science. Like I know me and Shumi go back and forth all the time because he's like, none of us are scientists. And I'm like, I'm a scientist, but we're all scientists. Like anybody who's doing this fits every definition of science in my book.
Have you ever just look at the look on someone's face when you start to explain? My wife gives me all the time, what we do, and they're like, oh yeah, and they're like, they come to my apartment and they're like, hey, what's that? Is this stuff alive? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, can we touch it? How do you? And then I start explaining. My wife was like, oh my God, here he goes again. And yeah, we have to test everything, and it grows and it pulls calcium and alkalinity from and then the more they ask questions, the more the person is like, oh shucks, I don't think I wanted to know what that actually was. It's you explain reefing to someone, it's so complicated. You can see the excitement in somebody's voice and the more in their face, and the more you talk, it's I didn't want to know all of that. But it's the hobby I've stuck with the longest. I've been in so many hobbies, and this is the one I've stuck with the longest because it's the one you can't master, and there's always little things to do. You fill a SBS, and then you have it great for a year, and then there's gear, there's the science parts. I'm reading all this stuff now about people are breeding and captive breeding. I wanted to breed clownfish before that dream was shattered, and so there's just so much things to do.
Dream of your wife wanted to breed clownfish, I thought.
Well, it's just too much work. When I started buying this stuff and the stuff started coming, so you need to get algae to feed the rotifers, to feed this, to do that, and then hey, I'm still in an apartment, and just when the stuff started arising, my wife was like, "What's that for? More fish stuff?" I'm like, "You wanted to do this. This was your thing." Like this, and then I got algae, and I started bubbling the algae. I started making Fido, and I'm like, I gotta feed the stuff that feeds the stuff that feeds the fish.
Yeah.
And
I mean, me and Shimi had M&M Aquatics on one night, and he makes it sound so simple, but like at the same time, there's so much involved. And he's like, anybody can do this, and I'm like, I don't think he gives himself enough credit for what he's doing. Like breeding clownfish it's impressive. Like I was really impressed with everything that he does.
Yeah.
It's like a skill. Devin does IT, and I imagine like sometimes when you go and you just do things, and people are like, "Man, like that's cool. Like you just made wizardy stuff and stuff happen." But it took years to get to that point. Like years of making mistake and having some intuition. It's technology, but it's probably an art. Like someone can probably follow 10 steps or 20 steps to get to a problem.
Yep.
But you just have experience where like, I could just jump to number 9 because more than likely it'll be number 9. And yeah.
You have that knowledge base of probable cause, I guess, rather than going through all the steps. Yeah, that's fair.
Yep.
It's true.
Yeah.
Even with this stuff, like the amount of projects, like learning how to like work with acrylic, and before I was even into reef tanks, like freshwater tanks, I built my own doser using like Arduino and stuff. I'm doing like solar stuff, like all the stuff that's not even directly reef tank related, but I'm doing because of my reef tank. So it is crazy the diverse stuff that rabbit holes you end up down.
I'm not a DIY person. I think I've told you both this story before privately. I'm not a DIY person, and I'm still not a handy person, but I've learned like I bought a fridge, like a nice Samsung fridge, and I was going to have a plumber and pay the guy $300 an hour to hook up like the ice maker. And I bought the ice maker kit. And when the fridge came and I saw the ice maker kit, I'm like, this is RODI cable. Like I know this is just 1/4-inch push connect. So I literally just...
You were going to spend $300.
An hour. Like who knows how long it would have taken the guy. But I just literally tapped my sink and like connected, and it just push connected. I'm like, babes, like I know what this is. Like this is just ROD. Like my ROD, my thing that I take over your sink and make water. And
Yep.
It's been 2 years leak free, so I'm the man now. Like I can fix plumbing.
My husband used to call me for plumbing. I'm saying used to because he's next to me. I was always the plumbing guru, but my dad, I was such a daddy's kid, and he was a mechanic and an electrician, and I did everything with him. And so I knew all the plumbing and stuff, and like holding the pipes and holding it together for him, like while he was doing the next part. And so anytime we had plumbing issues, my husband would be like, "Brandy, come fix this." But a couple of months ago, I sent him a picture of a closet, and I said, "Can you make this into a shower?" He turned it into a shower, and I think he figured out all kinds of plumbing stuff. So now he's the plumbing guru.
Nice.
Dev, eventually when you come to the show,
everybody should be able to do plumbing.
Yeah.
You will meet her husband. He's like the coolest, chill guy.
I'm in.
And he puts up with like he comes to the he's
up with?
No, I mean with like all the fish people hanging around, like talking fish, and he's there and he's into the conversation, and
Beautiful.
And sometimes I think he's not listening and he's asking a question and he remembers stuff. So I really, I only met him for the few days at Reef, but he got it.
Good catch, Brandy.
He this is probably weird to go in how I met him. He was a football player in college. And I didn't want anything to do with him because he was playing football. And I was like, "You're dumb. I don't want to date a football player." And he was in my same English class. And then he was with me that summer in my computer science class. And he had to help me with the homework. And I very quickly was like, "You're not dumb. Maybe we can hang out."
Is he still looking at you? Because
can you hear me, Matt? He said, "Yeah."
He's probably just shaking his head and laughing in the background.
He knows the story. I was very clear with him. I wanted nothing to do with him until I realized he was smart. And I was like, maybe football players are smart. So moral of the story, don't judge a book by its cover.
That's great. There you go.
Right.
No judgy.
Yeah, don't judge people.
You never know. Yep. Help him with homework. Yeah, I don't know. You just learn so much. It's crazy. And I like DIY stuff, obviously. I know, Seymour, you're not as big on DIY.
But I like trying though. Like my
Yep.
stuff is never neat.
Mm-hmm.
It's never gonna be like Dev neat. I always say Dev or Billy Pipes neat. It's never gonna be that neat. But I like to try, and by trying and screwing up, like I know when I do the dream tank, like I'm not gonna do the plumbing probably, but now
Why
I
not?
kind of know what I
You've
want.
got the plumbing. I did a really good video on plumbing. Very thorough. You should watch it.
Yeah,
You'll be
but I'm
confident
not.
afterwards.
Yeah, but no matter how much I measure 3 times and cut once, I always cut it short. It ends up like it's just let's. Hey,
Just buy lots of
like,
pipe. You'll be fine. You got this.
Yeah.
You know what we did? My 60-gallon, we had a drill, and we did all that piping all by ourselves. And what we did was we bought cheap pipe, not cheap. We bought Schedule 40 pipe and fit everything, and drew where it needed to be, and then used the pipe, the pretty pipe that we were going to use, and cut it based on how far it needed to go into the fitting, and everything was perfect.
I drilled my tank, the 25 Laguna stuff. I'll do it. It's just not gonna be like Devin neat. Like I do a lot of the same. Like Devin had those like dosing containers he made for the Voss bottles, and I tried it, and they work. Mine just doesn't look as cool and as neat.
What was the difference?
When I was spray painting, I got red paint somewhere, and it was just, hey, Devin, just listen. It works. It's just not like as clean or as neat as yours. Like I drilled my tank. I used the 2 little fishies overflow, but then the back one, it's kind of janky off to the side, and I didn't realize until I had already filled the tank. So, hey, like, you know, hey, listen, it works, and it's not going to leak.
Perfect.
But like I said, when you look under my sump, there's not going to be a perfectly zip-tied wires. It's not going to look like you open like an apple and everything is routed perfectly, but it works.
Mine is not perfect either. It is a mess.
Oh. Yeah, I don't believe you, but okay.
It is. Trust me.
So good at it. Matt's so incredibly good at it.
Yeah.
Completely unrelated, but I redid my network stuff in the house and like switches, and I bought a bunch of little like 6-inch cables to get rid of all like the wire mess. It makes me so much happier. That's all like pristine and not a rat's nest.
Yeah, I think that's why Matt's good at it, because he does networking stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't see it, but like even the first time I like my wife always tells me like, we are going to lose our security deposit when we leave this apartment because it's like 6 holes to like hang the radio. I don't know. I measured and I borrowed my friend's laser thing, but yet I was off by like 6 inches when I hung the lights. They were covering, and then in my
whoever moves, can we go help him fix holes? He said yes.
Yeah, just a little spackle, little filly, you'll be fine.
When I was hanging like my AI Prime in my kid's room, like it was 3 holes before I got it even close to being centered over the tank. So, you know, but then the next time I hung a light, I got it perfect. So, but it took 3 tries to get it perfect. So
third time's a charm. You should just, okay. So the other thing you could do is hold like a piece of string up with a little weight on it, and then figure out the placement that way, right? Like a little plumb bob style thing. Like throw a little washer, a little weight on a string, and then just hold it there until it's in the right spot. And then you can just put a little mark there, and then you know where to make your hole.
Yeah, now you tell me that.
Well, you didn't ask. What else do we got? We got solutions.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm not making any changes. Remember, that's my promise. I'm not making any changes.
Okay. Sounds good. Question: how do you like the Kessel light, and which one is it? With your one that's like 2 feet above?
It's the Kessel A360X. With the narrow reflector, I get about 140 to 170 par everywhere over it. I love the Kessel. I absolutely love the Kessel. The Kessel reminds me so much of like growing up in Jamaica, the shimmer. Like nothing beats the shimmer.
Yeah.
There's just one annoyance with Kessel for me.
Which is?
Like I don't understand why a premium light, it was the most expensive 90-watt light.
Yep.
It doesn't come with a controller. Like you have to pay $90 for the controller to like ramp it up and down. Like until the Radeon.
The Jungle?
Price, yeah, the Jungle. until the Radeon XR15 went up, Like the Kessel, when the Kessel came out, it was $450. So it was the most expensive light in that 90-watt category, but there was no onboard control, which was really annoying.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I don't like with it. Like there's a little thing, like there's just a hook to hang it from the ceiling, which it works, but it's a little annoying. But yeah, like you buy a Radeon, you buy any other light in that 90 to 100-watt category, it has onboard controls.
Yeah.
With this one, you don't. So I mean, I used my Reef Pack money to get it, but I don't think I would have bought it out of my pocket because it was $550. Like I could have gotten a Radeon and a Nero 5 for that price, you know.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. But in terms of Kessel, I love it. It's the small form factor. If I was using it to light, like I think my wife, if you take me out of the picture and she wanted a reef tank with a low profile, that with like the little Kessel arm, that is like the perfect thing. Like you can put it so close to the tank. No light spillage. The spread is great. You'll get great shimmer, and you won't even see it. It'll be so neat.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's fair.
I think he fell in love at Rap New York too, didn't he?
Oh man, I love the thing. When I saw it, like I appreciated the Jake video when I saw it, but when I saw the thing in action at the rap video, I'm actually sorry I didn't get the bigger one, because then I probably could have put the thing up to the ceiling. You know, with the narrow reflector, I would have gotten more par. But I like it.
She had pointed it out to me. It was right across. So at Rap New York, Dev, I don't know if you know this and anybody else, I was helping Clan Mania, and right across from Clan Mania was Kessel.
Yeah.
And I didn't pay attention because I don't know what I was doing. I'm oblivious. I'm always oblivious. People are like, I couldn't remember the variable flow thing that I don't remember now.
RFG.
Like, this is who I am. And there's too many acronyms in my head already. And everybody was like, oh, the Kessel. I was like, where was it at? And they were like, right across from Clan Mania. And I was like, what?
Yep.
I never looked up to see it.
Yeah, it was a tank. It was literally just a tank, and they had the Kessel like 2 or 3 feet over it.
I can imagine the tank because it was a big cube. Like, it was a massive cube. Like, how many gallons was it? Like 120 gallons?
Yeah, and that's just And
it's in my head, but I never because it was right across from me. Whenever I walked away.
It was too close to notice.
I couldn't see the forest for the woods, or I couldn't see the tree for the forest. How's the saying go?
Yeah.
Couldn't see the trees.
And it's more of an annoyance than anything, because you could actually put a timer on it. I know, like, even Fan said he likes it. And I like that too, especially when you're setting it up. But I don't think many people like go over and manually turn on. I like that you can set it that way with the manual control, but I don't know a lot of people who like turn their lights on and off or turn it down that way. Every day you're gonna forget 1 or 2 days. Like, you can easily use an Amazon timer or something and just turn it on and off that way, but it's missing a feature.
You don't have the wrapping.
It's missing a feature that everyone else has, and that's what makes it just look.
Okay, so I've never went for Kessel because the dongle things annoyed me, and they didn't have built-in control. That was like one of the original reasons I never did. But I'm just looking at that in the chat. But I was thinking, because right now I have this like IKEA light for like on the bandsaw when you're fragging and doing stuff. Having the little Kessel would actually be like just a smaller one would actually be good for that, because then you can get like more like bluey white and actually see the colors and stuff as you're doing it, instead of my warm white one. Is extremely overkill, but one day I was thinking that might be kind of cool. And then the other one.
Hi to Than. I've been one of his Patreon people for like over a year and a half, and I don't think I've ever like actually said anything to him. I just think I do his Patreon because I go to him for everything. Like, I'm like, what does a Sophestria need? Tidal Garden Sophestria. I think everything is amazing. I'm fangirling.
That deep dive,
fangirling?
Fangirling
or thangirling?
Fangirling. I love it.
So good. Oh, Dan's stream for like the coral auctions, everything. That's like where I learned half the coral names. I'm like, oh, that's what that one's called. I'm like, I have that one. I never knew it was called.
His deep dive videos are really good, and they don't get to Like, I
They're
like
awesome.
Jake Adams, but sometimes it's too science-y. Like, I just want to learn what this coral needs. And when someone is growing this coral for a living, it's in their best interest to know what it needs. Like,
Yep.
knowing when I bought a coral and I'm home from the store, like, knowing the scientific name and where it was collected is not going to help me. But finding out how much par it's grown in, someone who cultivates it in and stuff, helps me immediately. Like,
Yeah.
maybe when I'm great at it, like learning the scientific name, or when I want to see the light get sucked out of someone as I tell them about a coral, I'll learn the name. But I think just those deep dive videos like really help when you just want to,
I
when you just want
100%
to.
agree.
I think that there's like this barrier that we don't recognize that like I think a lot of us realize there's this barrier of knowledge or a learning curve, right? Like, and to throw everything at someone all at once is just it's overwhelming, and I think it can cause people to not want to be in the hobby. And I think there's so much value in having a hobby that is so strongly connected to science, whether it's reefing or whatever, making beer or bird watching or whatever it is. I think there's so much value in that I get really nervous about making a big deal about, like, getting upset when people who are new don't know that it's not an acan anymore. It's a micromusa. Like, I'm going to use the word micromusa, but I
use them both. They're interchangeable in my mind.
Yeah, I often do both in post because I don't want to scare someone off. I think there's so much value to having this hobby.
You know what? BRS. I'm gonna give a huge shout out to BRS here. Like, I never like Matthew. I think Matthew, who's doing the beginner videos for BRS, like we was doing them for Marine Depot before, and I never saw the value in those videos until like I think I caught my kids watching something, and it was like a simple video like, "What are nutrients?" And then I realized like, oh, there's a place for that. And then I started like watching it. I was like, oh, like before I knew what a siphon is and what it did, like the first time I didn't do my ATO properly and it siphoned out, like, oh, knowing how to start a siphon and what that is, like, oh, that's good. Like, I learned the hard way by spilling water on my floor, but he's telling you what not to do before. So now I see the value in those beginner videos now, because I'm like, oh, someone is going to learn. And during the pandemic, a lot of people got into reefing, right? A lot of new people. We have a lot of new reefers. So I see the value in those videos now. I'm like, oh, I watch them now, not because I learned, but I know someone's going to get something from them. What are nutrients? What is like I call one of them watching what is mechanical filtration. Like, I'm always telling my kids, man, you need to change the filter floss. But like from that video, you know why you need to change the filter floss, or like his video today was why you need to do a water change. And it's so simple. I don't get anything from it, but I know now that they appeal to somebody, they appeal to people. So like when we're talking here, this stuff can seem like far-fetched or magic to some people, like, but there is a place for like beginners where we don't need to. I don't know Micromusa versus Lords and which one. I know Jake always says, I don't have many ACANs, but I know Jake always says, like, hey, if you put them next to each other, one eats the other.
Which is good knowledge, right? Like, I 100% believe, like I hung out with Evan Montgomery the whole time during rap, and he was teaching me so much, and I was like, I just don't trust people. So I'm like, I'm gonna look it up. And I found the scientific journal where they were talking about the taxonomy changes. And I was like, you're smart. And as I've already made the point, when someone's smart, I'm incredibly impressed by. Hence, I married my husband. Like, he was teaching me so much about the taxonomy, and it's that I do think that that's so valuable, and I think it's so incredibly important for that reason that you just said. But I think it's very overwhelming to someone who's in their first year, maybe even first 2 years.
Yep, that is true. Like, tank, pretty, get them to do water changes, get them to, like, get them to do water changes and maintain like the tank and keep it simple, and then you upgrade. Like, absolutely. Like, I've set up a tank and put SPS in it from day one, and they survived. But someone just needs to know, like, like, do this, keep it simple at first, because if you can grow, if you put zoanthids and you've grown out an entire tank of zoanthid in a year, you'll be more motivated to try something harder or try something. But if you keep killing zoas, then your chances of staying in and doing something. I actually used to, in New York, because of the weather, like, our reefing hobby can be very seasonal. Like, we're so tired. I was looking at it the other day, like, in New York, the summer versus the winter, we can get about 5 to 6 hours more of sunlight, summer versus winter. Mm-hmm. So in the summer, like, people want to go out, they want to have fun, so our reef tanks get neglected. Mm-hmm. So I used to get these awesome deals, like when you're finished having fun in the summer, you come home to your reef tank, like, everything's dead or it has algae. So September, you used to get these banging deals, like, hey, $500 and come take this tank. I need it broken down out of my house today. I don't see those deals anymore. So that probably means that people are staying in longer.
It's great. I think it's great.
Not great for my deals.
There's so much value in having a science hobby. Mm-hmm. And I don't care what it is. Like, I don't care if it's reef tanks. It doesn't have to be reef tanks. Like, there's so much value in that.
Yeah.
True.
It's true.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree.
Always learning.
You got 3 yellow tanks?
From 2 different people.
That guy earlier, I gave that guy my yellow, because I have a gem tank.
Yeah. And
my wife bought it for me. We got it from Petco by something.
Really?
When they were $1,500, we saw it at Petco for like $500, and my wife bought it for me like 4 years ago for like Father's Day. And I had a yellow tang, and 4 years ago, yellow tangs were a dime a dozen. And I gave it to a friend of mine once they started fighting. And the week after I gave it to him, Hawaii announced the ban. And he couldn't get yellow tangs anymore. So now he has a yellow tang that I saw last week, and it was like speaking to my soul. So now the gem tang is actually more common.
That's funny, eh?
For sale than an actual yellow tang. So Dupree,
my yellow tang was $40, and he was this big when I got him, and now I don't know if y'all seen him swimming around. He's like this big now.
Huh, so crazy. Yeah, no. In the chat, they're talking about like fish prices being expensive in certain things, and that's just kind of joking about it. But yeah, I've had 2 different people that were shutting down their tanks. They're like, "Oh, do you want my fish?" I was like, "Okay, thanks." So I've acquired 3 yellow tangs that I didn't intend on getting, just because of like people moving or shutting down their tank, just local people.
I might be taking up a trip to Big White for a yellow tang dip.
Gonna come for a visit.
Yep.
Excellent.
Definitely.
We're so lucky here in Charlotte. Like, I would have never imagined Charlotte to have the reef community that we have. Mm-hmm. There are so many reefers, and there's like 10 reef stores easily, and like on the level almost of worldwide coral, like as far as like neatness and tidiness, and just like walking in and just being shocked at how like just organized everything is. There's at least 4 that are like that.
Nice.
And it's I've gotten so incredibly lucky. I don't know that I would have started reefing if I hadn't moved to Charlotte, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Like walking into one of these stores and like seeing one of the stores here actually bought a furniture store. So it's massive, like beyond massive. And we walked in, and like I was like I feel like I have the support that I could do this if I needed to. And I lived in Atlanta before, so it's and they're all over the place here, and a new one just opened down the street, and it's amazing how much of a difference having access to this stuff
makes. Well, and it's inspiring too, right? You're bored, you walk in, you see these beautiful tanks, you're like, I want that in my house.
Yeah, and you're like, I can do that. Like, if they're doing it, they can help me do it. So. We do have Petco too. Our Petco's actually got a decent salt area, which always surprises me. I always go and look at it, and I'm surprised how good it looks. I've never bought anything from them, but
when I first started, like a couple of years ago, like looking at worldwide corals and unique corals and their business selling corals online, I'm like, why would someone do that? And then like I'll just like when I started traveling for work, and I went to Memphis a lot and the surrounding area. like I do what any normal reefer does who travels for business. When you have downtime, you go to fish stores. The fish stores in that area were not good at all. Like, I was really surprised. I was like, the stuff was expensive. The stuff wasn't in good shape. So I was like, yeah, I could see why someone would buy from like Corals online, because it's, like
Well,
it's
okay.
way better.
To your point in the chat, Rob B, he's like, it's a ghost town in my area for reefing. No stores, not many reefers. So I mean, exactly. What else are you gonna do, right? You either need other reefers or you gotta order online. It's your options.
And I told him, I said, you got to start a club or something. That's what I did. We have a Carolina club, and I started it, and like that helps, like letting people know that this is a thing.
Yeah.
Wait, what? You started it? Like, what is?
There ain't no stopping the fountain.
You started you started the Carolina Reef Club?
Yeah.
Oh.
You didn't know that? We started in January. We're brand new.
I didn't know that. Okay. That's
awesome.
Talking about Charlotte and Atlanta makes me want grits.
That's cool.
Yep.
Only if there's tons of cheese in it.
There you go. Be tasty. You guys make me hungry.
Well, you guys were talking about spam and made me so hungry. I forgot where the conversation was talking about. I think it was Reefapalooza, how to cook spam. Somewhere we were talking about spam and cooking spam, and we were talking about.
It was because we were doing our BRS coupon codes.
Oh, that's what it was. Oh, sorry.
The spam, yummy.
Yeah, because I mean, we all felt like we were spamming. I know, like a lot of people were like, "Man, this feels like spam." We felt the same way. We were like, "This sucks." So they changed the model, right? Like, we're not gonna do that again. So I appreciate that they. We felt even worse than you guys did.
So imagine, I don't remember how the conversation then turned to how to cook spam and cooking up spam. Okay.
It was probably me. Let's be honest. I was probably like, ooh, I used to eat spam as a kid.
I don't know if I've ever even tried it. Is it good or is it not so good? You're like, it's edible?
I haven't eaten it. When you're growing up in Jamaica, everything you see on TV that's American, I remember liking it. I haven't eaten it in a while, but I remember loving it.
I did too. I haven't had it as an adult. But as a kid, I was like, yes, it's spam night. My mom would make mashed potatoes and like would buy a bag of and cabbage. She'd boil cabbage and we'd have spam and mashed potatoes and cabbage. And I grew up poor, for the record, y'all. Like, apparently that's poor kids' food.
Yeah. Rob says salty as heck. Yes, like if you look at one day I was walking through and I saw spam and I was like, oh, 1 tablespoon of spam contains like 200% of the recommended daily intake of sodium. I was like, oh, and I used to eat like half a can myself. So yeah, okay, cool,
perfect.
Yeah. That's really funny.
I can't recall like if I've actually had it or not. I'll try it one day for fun. I'm curious to know. I know of it, but I don't know if I've ever actually eaten it. So.
I know people I remember. I think I was telling O this. I remember people like making fun of like the cheap food as a kid, and me being confused. Like, but it tastes good. Like, why are y'all making fun of it?
Hey, yeah. Everyone has different taste buds. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, we didn't have money to buy the fresh meat. We bought the canned meat. Tuna, lots of cans of tuna. And I'm a very healthy human being. Cheers again. I'm going to wind up drinking this whole bottle, and I can totally fill it at this point, for the record, if it's not apparent. Yeah, spam.
Mine is empty. It's much sadness. Interesting. Things
Very
you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
For all.
To bring it back to reef tanks.
Yes.
Okay. What do you feed your tank standard things, or is it random? Do you mix it up? I know you've made your own food. But
yes.
Do you feed mini package or just all your own DIY stuff?
Because I'm going crazy with the phosphates, I'm doing now just seaweed extreme pellets. I think BRS also makes some medium pellets, and then I use Chris, can you pass me that fish food right here? And I'm also using Formula One flakes.
I don't know if I've ever fed flake food to the reef tank.
Yeah, and I'm now realizing that I thought I had the marine one, but it says for all tropical fish. So this is probably freshwater food. Okay. I guess
Freshwater. Okay, that's.
Oh no, it says marine and tropical. So yes.
Now, random question: do you think there's a big difference between freshwater and saltwater fish food?
I have no idea.
But this probably I think the protein intake.
Mm-hmm.
I know if you're feeding them, I think if I was feeding live, I'd probably be more concerned. But for this, they're probably just taking like the protein and the other things that the fish need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what I feed. I have a black container with it's blue and silver and metallic-y.
Yes.
That is. Everybody know what that is. I know it's not cheap, and that I have it in an auto feeder for my tank upstairs, which I never do anything with, and it's a problem. It's got zoas in it and a lot of green hair algae.
Yeah.
But the zoas are still growing, even though the green hair algae is everywhere. And I just have it in an auto feeder, and I forget about it, to be perfectly honest. And it seems to be growing. And then in this tank, I do the Reef Frenzy, and I do some Reef Nutrition, and I do Tier 1. Now, whenever I do this, twice a week, I take a little glass bowl, and I mix it with AB Plus, and the Reef Nutrition, and the Tier 1, and the Elos food, and basically any kind of coral food I've ever been able to get my hands on. Yeah. And I stir it up, and I feed all the corals with my Julien's thing. And, yeah. And then I have, is it TDO?
Yes, that's Reef Nutrition.
So I have those pellets in a, I don't know if y'all can see it. There's a hole cut up here. This is probably going to blow O's mind too. So there's a hole cut up there, and my auto feeder, my Neptune auto feeder, is up there.
On top of your lights?
Yeah.
Nice.
Do you see the hole?
Yeah.
I see the hole, but you're not blowing my mind because on top of my hydros with my Ecotech bar, I actually zip tie. It's not as fancy as cutting a hole, but I zip tie my auto feeder on top of it, and it stays there, and it's cool.
It's like, pace yourself.
He's like, I can tell you're drunk. Thanks.
He's looking out for you.
Devin, as you were talking about fish food, I just realized something. Like, I probably add a crap ton of aminos to the fish food when I was making it.
Yeah.
Because I think I bought a gallon of like Acro Power, and this is what I have left. So
the rest is in your fish food?
Probably. Yeah.
That's a solid chunk.
Okay.
Hey.
I think I'm gonna hold off on that. Hey, again, anybody in New York that has low nutrients, I got you.
Yep, you're good. I have high nutrients. Do you have a food for me?
No, it's called not feeding.
That doesn't work either. There's too many fish in there.
Dev, I have a question for you guys.
Ask away.
I am using Instant Ocean salt, and I know there's a few people that say, there's people who say, hey, the salt matters, and there's also people that say the salt doesn't matter. But what salt are you using and why?
I am currently using Neomarine salt. I have used Instant Ocean in the past, and it works perfectly fine. However, I find it makes your bins all nasty after a while. So if you do lots of water changes and you're dosing anyways, I don't think the brand of salt makes a huge difference. If you are not dosing and relying on water changes, then I think there's a lot more emphasis on salt, because it's going to have a lot more like the trace elements and the other good stuff that you're replenishing within it, right? So I think it depends. I think, most salts, I don't think salts are bad, you know, like I'm sure there's bad batches or they mix it wrong, there's too much of something in it. But in general, if you're doing water changes, any salt with a big water change is going to be a benefit to your tank, right? It's not going to hurt it unless there's like some bad batch, something completely off. So in general, but I find higher quality salts, aka more expensive salts, they are cleaner, so they don't make your bins as funky and nasty over time. That's honestly the biggest thing that I find, and you're probably getting more benefit for trace elements and all like the other elements inside of it.
And I do find that Instant Ocean takes up. Well, for Reef crystals is just like I stay away from that because that one makes it like if you think Instant Ocean makes your Reef crystals makes your bins dirty. I think the parameters are so high. It's just there's like a brown crud that you get from Reef crystals that I actively stay away from it. But
I've had that from Red Sea too, actually. Like,
well, if you're using the Coral Pro because it has real high, it has high, not the blue bucket, but the red one. The Coral Pro, where the alkalinity is 11, 12, like I think you get that precipitation. Absolutely.
Now, the other thing to consider too is you also have like real salts where they take salt water, let it evaporate in like the desert, and they scoop it up, and you know that's your salt, right? Or they have synthetic salts like the anhydrous salts and stuff, which are going to not have as many impurities because it's more of like made in a lab and not in a field in the desert, right? So there's like a couple different things that kind of play into it too.
Yeah, I don't. Let me selectively tell this story, but like HW Marine, like I was talking to like Roger from Toons a couple years ago, and you know, like, and please don't take this as gospel, but I think he says like HW Marine, like when they're doing some kind of test in like the oil fields, like one of the tests has to do with how many mysis shrimp survive, and they use HW Marine because it's pure salt and it takes like all the other like parameters out of the equation. So, you know, like if you need to have 50 mysis shrimp survive, like you want to use HW Marine because it's synthetic and your chances of having one extra mysis shrimp survive because, you know, the salt was pure, you actually do it.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
Yeah. So I listen, I've cycled through all of them, but I just found that I can get Instant Ocean like really cheap. Like when it's on sale at Petland, it's like $30.
Yeah.
And I just buy it, and I can buy a year's supply. But I think I'm gonna change. I think it's gonna make me feel better.
I mean, I've used so many brands, and for me, I've never had a bad issue, right? Like they've all worked. And the biggest thing now is like, which one do I feel is, you know, one, keeping my bins not from getting nasty, and two, whatever you feel is doing more benefit to the tank. And yeah, I mean, that's a big thing. Like none of them are going to kill your tank, right? They're all going to work to an extent. But if you're supplementing anyways, you're not relying on the salt as much. If you're not dosing, you're not adding trace other stuff, then you're probably relying on your salt to provide that. So that's another big consideration.
True.
So it depends, like everything in life.
That's true.
I used Red Sea for ages, and the thick layer I got from Red Sea just was disgusting, and I ended up switching to Tropic Marin specifically because I didn't want stuff in the tank or like in the holding bin, and it's been pretty good. I probably should check it and see how bad it's gotten, but it's not as bad as what it was with the Red Sea, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Red Sea, if you use a Red Sea Coral Pro, like
I used the blue bucket and the black bucket. I started with the black bucket because that was what I was buying for my LFS whenever I first started. So I bought what they had, what they were using, because it was what I figured my corals were used to. And then when I realized that I needed to test stuff and that my alkalinity was like having these crazy swings, I switched to the red bucket because it wasn't as high. Or the blue bucket. Did I say red bucket? The blue bucket.
Yeah. The alkalinity for the Pro is so high.
That's right.
So you have to follow their instructions on how to mix it, because if you mix it too long, like I used to get these really, like I have crazy coralline algae in my tank. So when I scrape it off, it comes in these really like chips-like chunks. And I used to get those in my bin because I guess I was mixing it too long, because I'm the guy who wants to I'll drop the Powerhead in it and mix it for a couple days. So any salt that you can't do that with, my thinking is like, hey, it's always mixing in the tank. Why do I care if it's circulated in the container? But I think Red Sea has specific instructions on how long to mix it, what temperature to mix it. Like I usually just mix it at whatever temperature it is, and then only heat it right before it goes in the tank. But I think with Red Sea, like
Hmm.
like especially with the higher alkalinity salts and higher calcium,
Yeah.
there is specific ways to do it.
Well, that's because the alkalinity will like deplete over time or precipitate or whatever the heck it does, but it will drop over time. Now, if you can auto water change, I'm a big fan of it because then it doesn't really matter. You don't have to heat it, so you're saving that electricity. I mean, if the elk's a little bit off, it doesn't really matter as much because you're only doing small, frequent water changes. You're not doing like a big one. But if you are doing like bigger water changes, then I always advise people pick a salt that matches whatever your alkalinity is. That way, you're not going to cause a big swing if you have to, emergency water change or you do something with your tank. Swings are bad.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Speaking of swings, I had this crazy like connection thingy where I was using a Pax Bellum reactor, and I had the connection where you put the effluent from the calcium reactor in,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to disconnect it yesterday because I realized the Chaeto was dying in it. I don't know. It ended up with so much detritus and it was dying. And after not having my calcium reactor running for like 1 day, I've gone down like a DKH.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so as soon as this stream is over, I'm going to go do my calcium reactor.
Good. Okay. Actually, speaking of that, calcium reactor. There I am in the background. Would you go back to dosing? I mean, you dose in some tanks, or would you stick with calcium reactor? I know you changed a lot. And Brandy, after that, I'm curious to see what you do.
I was using Alpha Reef,
Mm-hmm.
and I really liked it. I think I just got to the point where I was dosing so much. I think I was at that theoretical limit. Like I think a couple of months ago, like I asked Dev everything. Like I run everything by multiple people anyway. So you probably started getting weird questions from me about like, I was asking you about Lou and for Lou's contact info.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was asking. Like I think I was up to the point where I was doing 120 milliliters a day of Alpha Reef, which I think is, when I was asking around, like that was the most. Like even the guy from BRS that has this 60 cube, he wasn't doing that much. So I think I was at that limit where my alkalinity I couldn't keep it stable. So that's when I sort of hooked up. I think it's the same calcium reactor that exploded. Dupree Producer Reef actually fixed it for me.
Your Vertex?
It's the same one yeah. So I am running. I'll tell you that story sometime. As you look.
I think I've heard it. I just made a big face because I think I heard it at one of the SEMAS meetings.
Yes, but yeah, I've used everything, and I like the calcium reactor because I'm just looking for simplicity, and you use the regulator. It's a lot more gear, of course, but nah.
It's just so stable, too. The only downfall in my mind is the pH, that it knocks it down a bit. Otherwise, it's just so stable.
Depending on where you are with nutrients.
Which is what I'm struggling with right now, Devin, because I have to do so. You saw Alex G's earlier. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm actually going to be trying like a bunch of things to like do the pH. Like I've actually ordered the stir. Oh, again, I was messaging you about the stir and the thing. Like I actually bought the stir and I wanted to do the calc thingy. But
the DIY one?
My reactor is not the same as yours. Like I have the calcium reactor, which has a plate at the bottom. So I still have the is it
an acrylic plate at the bottom?
Yeah.
I have a friend who used something. I'm assuming it's probably the same thing, and he used my Dremel and cut off the acrylic part.
Yeah, well, I left it, and my kids played with it and broke the thing that goes, so I had to throw it out. But Alex, like, talked me into, I have the Avast Marine Calc Stir, and he says, like, he was talking to me about attaching some acrylic things to it, so it'll agitate the calc a little bit more. So before I buy anything or go the calc slurry route, like, I'm just going to try and, like, mix the calc more potent to see what happens.
Yep.
So I'm gonna, I have to use calc washer, and I have to put my skimmer line outside, and I have to like buy oversize my skimmers to keep my pH decent. If I ever go with like a smaller, like I look for skimmers that have the biggest pumps that can fit in my sump. Like if anyone has a Vertex 180i that's for sale, like I'll totally buy it off for you. Yeah, that's like I have to pull outside air. I have to do calc, or my pH is like 7.7, 7.6.
So, which one funny thing with that, like the BRS video they did recently about like the phosphates and some of the media. So I have 2 little fishies in mine, plus some other ones. But in one tank, I'm always fighting phosphate, and the other one is just like perfect. It just stays at the perfect level. So it all depends what you're dealing with.
Yeah, and I think I think using the 2 little fishies, that kind of weirded me out a little bit when I saw that. But I think I'm getting phosphates from so many other sources, my fish food and stuff, probably my Chaeto dying, that I probably need to take care of that first before I start solving the one that has, because I think like in a healthy tank that's growing, that has a lot of corals, I think the corals will probably use that phosphate that's coming from the media.
Yep.
So let me not focus on the little speck here. Let me take care of the big gorilla that's,
Good point.
Yeah.
And it's also a younger tank problem too, right? Because corals like phosphates, they eat them as food for them in a sense, right? Like they need them to grow. So as you get bigger colonies, it's going to be less and less of an issue because the corals will just soak it up. But until you get there, then it's consideration.
True. Just one addition before you go to Brandy, and this is something important I learned. Like when you ask someone like what they're doing, and I got caught in this too when I was like, hey, no water changes. It is highly specific on the person's tank. Like having a mature tank that has a ton of corals, like you can get away with like murder. Maybe that's not the word I should use, but you can get away with a lot. Versus like I used to take these things to heart, like, hey, this guy doesn't run filter socks and he doesn't do water changes, but I had a tank that was a year old that was empty. Like, like you can't get away, and I forced into it. But I learned
bacteria colony if you were to look at the diversity of bacteria, it probably would have been minimal.
Yeah. So everything depends. I know you already said that a couple of times in
100%.
this thing. Yeah, so sometimes there's like, someone's tank who like someone who has SPS and a ton of flow and beer bottom can probably get away with a lot that you have low flow and you have LPS and you have no fish. You see someone that's like throw a bunch of fish in, like they got a ton of fish, they have a ton of filtration, they have a ton of flow, they have a huge skimmer, a huge refugium, but you and I probably can't get away with that.
Yeah. Okay, so on the it depends category, Sawyer was asking, is the calcium reactor overkill for 65-gallon tank? And my initial thought is like probably, because 65 isn't as big. However, if it's wall to wall of encrusting coral, probably not. So tank size doesn't really matter. It's how much coral's in your tank, right? Because I could have a 300-gallon tank with 2 frags in the middle. It's going to consume nothing. Or I could have, that 65-gallon wall-to-wall packed, and it's going to suck up tons. So the tank size doesn't really matter. It's, for me, is if you feel dosing's getting expensive, right? You feel like you're spending a lot of money on, 2-part or whatever liquid supplements you want to use from whatever brand, right? If you feel that's getting expensive, then that's kind of the point where like maybe you'll start looking at calcium reactor, because it's expensive up front, but it's much cheaper long term to run it and maintain it.
Yeah, when I use a calcium reactor on a little tank that's not ready for it, you end up going through these swings because the minute the CO2 comes on, the alkalinity shoots up, and then you turn it off and it slowly goes back down, and then you turn it on.
Micro adjustments.
If you don't, but it.
And then wait.
That's another thing I had to learn, where like I thought like one full turn was a micro adjustment for I think I saw Phil do a video where I'm like,
that makes me laugh.
Yeah, Phil did a video where Phil was messing with he's like, here's how I turn the CO2. I'm like, Phil, you didn't move anything. He's like, oh, yes, I did. Like, I saw the pressure needle. I was like, wait a second.
Phil's like, Seymour's
like, I'm like doing hey man, like I'm like, I had no reference point.
That should be good.
Like, so I'm like
that's a good point. Having a reference point is so important.
Yeah.
He's like,
views are so important.
He's like, turn it a little bit. I'm like, That's a turn, like one full Coke bottle turn.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't know.
See, the
I
more
need
you
to get
know.
a drink. Like, you guys are having way too much fun. So I don't know if this is cool, Dev. Can I just go get a drink?
All right. I don't know how late we'll go, but go for it.
All right. All right.
Okay, Brandy, what do you do on your tank? What's your dosing
Um,
supplementation?
So I use Triton.
Yep.
And I also recently on this tank I added the cockwasser because I felt like the Triton the amount I was going to have to be dosing was going to be ridiculous. And before I had started with a BioCube and then I went to 60-gallon.
Yep.
And now I'm on this almost 180-gallon tank.
Nice.
So I use the Triton and I dose the amount I want to with the Triton to keep the magnesium and stuff where it should be, and supplement with the cockwasser.
Okay, nice. How do you like Triton? That's one I have not tried that system.
I like it. I'm trying to remember why I started Triton in the first place. It was over a year ago, and I'm still using that same box. And then after I had bought Triton, I won their Christmas giveaway last year.
Nice.
And they sent me 2 boxes that I ended up just giving away to my club.
Nice.
And I still have my same box that was before Christmas of last year. And I think it was because I knew my traces started to get a little off, and I got the Red Sea ABCD. And as someone who used to work in a lab, it just doesn't feel right to put stuff into a tank, into anything without knowing what I'm putting in.
Yeah.
And so I like the whole like dose it based off of your calcium just made me uncomfortable. I think I started the Triton stuff, which is probably about the same thing, but I do ICP testing now. Probably would have been no different if I had been doing ICP testing back then, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
But it just made me feel better knowing that it was like a little bit more, pharmaceutical grade or whatever it is that they call it. And I've never had issues with it, so I've never changed anything else.
Okay, that's fair. It works. Excellent.
You say you're doing Triton? I missed some of that.
Triton and Kelk.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
And right now I have my calc stirring. I actually increased the stirring after I had talked to Richard from Aficionado. I don't think I was having to stir enough. And I have it dosing from, I think, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And so that way it compensates for the pH drop.
Yep.
And so that's a huge plus of the cockwasser is the compensation for the pH drop. And I would once the cockwasser isn't enough to keep up, I would probably switch to a calcium reactor, but I don't think it's necessary yet.
Yep. No, it's personally, I just rate it as whenever you feel it's getting too expensive to dose it, that's a good point where a calcium reactor might make sense. Okay, Port Wolf, as an idea, feeds O2 into the skimmer from an oxygen tank with calanoid, I think it's supposed to be solenoid, to control it, pH meter. Would it need a scrubber meter? Okay, so I actually have been down this conversation, a big rabbit hole with somebody. I don't remember who it was. I don't know if it was Chris Maciai or Cruz or Nick, but one of them, I remember this big, deep conversation about this. And apparently this wouldn't work because adding oxygen does not drive out the CO2. So it sounds like a good idea, but that one is not. I've been down this theory many times with people.
I think low pH is caused by high CO2. And I think when a lot of us hear that, we think low oxygen. Like, no, it's high CO2 in the surrounding air. Yes, it's different. Like, they're somewhat, I think, and I think I went down that rabbit hole with you, Deb. Like, we've been down
2 different shaped molecules, so they're both gonna be able to absorb at different rates, and one absorbing isn't going to prevent the other from absorbing because they're 2 different shapes.
Yeah, you can add more oxygen, but you're not getting rid of the CO2, and that's the dealio with that one. So
I'm gonna watch this again and use that answer because that is a scientist answer, and no one can argue with that when you say it that way. Like, let me make a note of where in the stream this is because
carbon monoxide and oxygen are more related than carbon dioxide and oxygen.
Okay, So spot on in the chat. Carbonic acid, exactly. Okay, so carbonic acid that reduces pH. So in order to remove the carbonic acid from the water is how you raise your pH, by removing the CO2 or carbonic acid. And kalkwasser helps kind of bind it and remove it, as does hydroxides, which if you watch my pH video, that was another rabbit hole. But hydroxides also bond and remove it. That's why they're like magical for pH. But you got to deal with whatever builds up with it. So it's trade-off.
Yeah. And I just have to say that if you have high CO2 in your room, like more surface agitation is probably not going to help that much.
Yep.
Like there's so much reaction happening in your skimmer that that dwarfs anything else you're doing. So like Dev, you and I have been down this rabbit hole for years. Like That's why I was saying earlier, I love the Tunzi skimmer, but the pump doesn't pull enough air. Like I've tried, I've been through every I've used every skimmer in the book. Like I like the great whites. I use the great white skimmers. They use Eden pumps. They don't pull a ton of air. Like you need, like right now I'm using the Royal Exclusive because it's a Red Dragon pump. Pulls a ton of air. Like you need like a Vertex. Like I need to, like someone said he opened his windows and his pH went from, that's what you need. You need that. That just shows you that you need that outside air. So for that person, probably running a skimmer line outside
would be a big increase.
Probably help. And again, you also don't want to use like a small 1/4-inch tube if possible. Like I have a 1/2 inch going out my window. Like use a bit, it's like sucking through like 6 feet through.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
not so much a secret, but some of my club members have been to my house and they all joke that my house is a jungle.
All the plants, that helps.
Yeah, I whenever I started having issues with pH, I started looking at plants who take up carbon dioxide, and that's what I started buying, like snake plants and money tree plants and stuff like that, and I put them all around the tank, and I think that helps a ton. I have no scientific proof other than photosynthesis, and we know how photosynthesis works.
You need to like chart your pH for a few days and then take all the plants and put them in a different room for a few days and see what the difference is.
That would actually be really interesting. I should do that.
It would be.
I have a friend who, Rob mentioned a CO2 meter. I have a friend who has a CO2 meter in his house, and CO2 was through the roof, and his humidity was also really high.
Yep.
And he got a dehumidifier, and his CO2 dropped, and his pH tank went up.
Yeah, I did for mine. I put an air exchanger in the house, and that same thing made a big difference.
Well, he was shocked because he didn't put the humidity in, or the dehumidifier in, for anything to do with the tank, just that the house was so humid because of the tank. And putting that in made a huge difference for CO2 in the room and pH in the tank, which makes sense. Yep. So that's there's all kinds of little tricks that people have figured out along the way.
And this pH thing, I think, can be another thing that's also region dependent, because like Dev, I'm in New York, I'm in a cold climate. Like during the winter, we need to have our windows sealed. In fact, I started having pH problems when the building, cold air was seeping in, and the building came and replaced all my windows and resealed everything. So there's no, there's no outside air seeping in. So if you're in a climate where like your house is not as sealed for winter, or you keep your windows open, you don't have this issue.
Dan, it would take a lot of plants in my place. I'm like, tidal jungle.
Yeah.
Garden is in the name. I mean,
that's really funny. It made me laugh too. I mean, I think plants are important, and I feel like anybody who I've noticed people who like corals seem to just enjoy growing things, and I feel like people who have corals tend to have plants and tend to have gardens and tend to have like other things. Like I think we all get fulfillment from that, like taking care of something and seeing it prosper.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Okay, so a few people, if you open your window and there's like a big boost in pH, that means there's too much CO2 in your room. If your house is super sealed, or lots of people or pets, any people respirating is adding CO2 to your room. So first step, I would hook up an outside air line to your skimmer if you can. Obviously, if you don't own the place, this is not always feasible. But if you can do that, that's like step one. And if you're the next step, adding like an ERV or an HRV, basically an air exchanger, makes a huge difference because it will help freshen up the air in your house. But yeah, I mean, it's extreme for just your fish tank for a lot of people, but it's also
Is
better.
there?
Well,
Is there anything
for
that's
some
extreme
people,
for just my fish tank?
you can sell your spouse on the fact that it's better for you. If your CO2 is too high, you're going to be sleepy, you're not going to be as alert, healthier for the family.
You know what? Funny enough, you said that, Dev.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember who I was. I don't remember if it was Brandy or Dev. I was like, I need to get a CO2 meter, and I'm gonna sell it as like something. Okay, yeah. When we were talking, I was like, I'm gonna sell it to my wife as like, hey, I want to see if like how high the CO2 if it's at dangerous levels. It's really a fish tank purchase, but that's how I'm gonna sell it.
You got to keep the family healthy, man. It's dual benefits.
Yep. I also tried the CO2 scrubbing media, but that thing, like I ended up having to replace that thing like every couple days. Like I was like, this is not sustainable. So yeah.
Well, that also tells me you have crazy high CO2 in your room.
Well, yeah, man. Like, yeah.
Recirculate it through your skimmer. It will last longer at least because then it's not filtering your whole room. It's more just what's coming out of your tank water.
Yeah, not going back down that route again. I think the air outside and Kalkwasser, I think I'm at a good place.
Yeah, you're doing pretty good now.
Marcus said in North Carolina, you have to keep your house sealed all year. There are 2 temps, super hot or freaking cold. Always humid.
Yeah. Is there like 2 days in between the transitions?
I mean, God, even today we walked outside and it was so incredibly humid. And it's, September 22nd?
Yeah.
And I it was that hot outside, but it like you could barely breathe. It was so humid.
Really, eh? Oh.
Yeah.
You know what? That's something that I only thought about recently. Like, I need to fight. Like when I'm pulling in all this air from outside and it's hot in New York, I need a chiller to fight that heat. So you actually will, like in the winter, if you're pulling a ton of air in, you need to heat your tank. You need to heat your tank because you're pulling. You know, you imagine in Dev, your climate is colder than I am, so I'm pulling in February. Like the only month of the year I use heaters in New York in January, February, and March. We're the coldest months, and that's when my heaters come on. And then I have to use starting in like April, May. I have to use a chiller because once the weather heats up, I'm pulling all that warm air into the skimmer. So I need to find a way to like. My tank gets hot. If my chiller fails, my tank overheats.
Fans, buddy.
And Than said humidity is rough. And I feel like this is an experiment that I'd really like to do because I feel like humidity gives you the option to use a dehumidifier, which should theoretically increase your pH. Because the CO2 is going to absorb into that water that's in the air.
Does
you're pulling out of the air. This is the way I might be completely wrong. I want to totally do an experiment. Maybe I can go to Than sometime with if he has a lot of humidity and we can experiment. I love experiments. And in my mind, like I feel like if you pull the air out of or the water out of the air, you're also going to be pulling the CO2 out of the air.
But
so I think that the humidity could be a positive thing.
But would it bind to the CO2? Water somehow? Like how would the CO2 be bound to the moisture in the air?
I can't answer that. I don't honestly. I feel like it's like not that much different though than the CO2 absorbing into our tanks. And I've totally got this idea from my friend who had his pH. He couldn't get his pH up. He got the dehumidifier and a CO2 thing in his monitor in his house, and his CO2 went down. The second he plugged in the dehumidifier and the pH in his tank went up.
All right, I will test this one day too, and we will compare notes.
Yeah, I totally feel like this is something worth looking at, and it could be a potential CO2 scrubber from the air without us even realizing it.
I do have a humidifier and a CO2 meter, so I will like
dehumidifier. I feel like we could have stumbled into something that's really interesting.
Well, this could be interesting.
Yeah.
CO2 is a gas, yes, but it could be in the water too.
But it is in the water in your tank, so it's not. You can't 100% rule out that it wouldn't be in the molecules in the air somehow. I don't know. I'm gonna test this one day. I'm curious.
Yep,
you have to test it too, Brandy.
Yeah.
Yep, my next purchase on Amazon is a CO2 meter.
Well, it's obviously not binding to the liquid in the air because his CO2 was through the roof before he put in the dehumidifier.
Mm-hmm.
But the dehumidifier, it's something about like pulling it out of the air because it was making it into droplets then, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those droplets, I'm assuming, was pulling out the CO2. And it may not have been like a crazy amount, but it was enough to cause his pH in his tank to go up and his CO2 meter in his house to go down.
That's a bonus. Or, maybe not. Okay.
It could have been, it could be a totally spurious connection.
It could make your tank evaporate more, but would evaporation affect the CO2 rate? Only, I don't know. I'm getting lost in the science.
It depends on how big the droplets of water are that are evaporating and how much CO2 is still dissolved in those droplets of water.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
This is fascinating. Hey, I got really excited when he told me that he saw this random connection. And I'm like, I've been dying to test it.
Okay, let's multiple people test this. We'll reconvene in like a few months.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Maybe it's spurious. Maybe he just noticed something that happened at the same time.
It could be a fluke. It could be onto something. You never know.
Correlation is not causation.
Nope. It's just...
It must be
repeatable. Wouldn't it?
It must be repeatable for it to be right?
Yep.
Yeah. But, you know, this is how discoveries are made, though. Like, and for all I know, people already know the answer to this, and we just haven't looked through the extant literature. But
kudos to the guy who threw kalkwasser in his tank or threw vodka in his tank. It's like, hey.
Yeah.
That was a college kid. I'm sorry. The vodka in the tank.
Probably. He just tripped. Nutrients went away. He's like, interesting.
It was a dad's tank, and the college kid was like, let's get the fishes drunk. And the dad was like, huh, what happened to the tank?
Yeah, never know. Does he put calc in his ATO? I'm not a fan of calc in the ATO because it's not consistent. I'm much more favorable of controlling it via a dosing pump. Just so it's, yeah, because then you can control it. You can dial it up and down easily. Where it's if you know it's hotter, all of a sudden your tank evaporates more, you're dosing more calc, or you take out a coral or a frag or something and you forget to add more water, your ATO dumps a bunch in, and then you're spiking up all your stuff from the calc. So that's why I like a doser. It's safer, it's more consistent, reliable.
I like keeping my ATO full also. So not being able to fill it up till it's almost empty, so I can re-add the kalkwasser stresses me out.
Yep.
Fan said, I got 2 giant dehumidifiers and they are saving me big time. Humidity in the building went from 80% to 49%. I'm curious, did you see a difference in pH, or were you looking at that? Like he would be the one to test that. Like,
yeah,
see if that actually made a big difference. Your kids.
I see more evaporate. I use calc through a doser because I keep it steady. Like, I see a huge difference in consumption in the winter when we have internal heat. Like, the air is drier and I get more evaporation. I used to think like, hey, in the summer it's warmer, more evaporation, but that's because I was using fans at that time to cool my tank. So, but I actually see way more evaporation in the winter because the air is just drier, and maybe I'm pulling in that outside air. So that's what I see. So I just stick to 2 liters a day. And even in the summer, like in the winter, my ATO kicks on more, but I'm tempted to like bump up the calc a little bit, but I'm like, nah, just keep it. And that way I don't have to mess with it. Winter, summer, you know, it's 2 liters will, you know, is pretty much standard.
Yeah, keeps it reliable, consistent. Okay, let me reread this. I gotta reread your question. Sorry there. Gringo Cabezon.
He said, does put calc in his ATO.
No, he doesn't.
It's more evaporation, which adds more from the ATO with calc. And my friend uses a calc stirrer. He's actually the one who told me to buy a calc stirrer.
Yeah, none of us here use it for.
He was talking about my friend, I think. Had that experience. He's the one who was actually like, you've got to get a calc stirrer. You've got to start using kalkwasser. So yeah, he has a calc stirrer.
It is some magical stuff, and it can actually go quite a long ways if you have a decent sized calc stirrer.
Yeah.
Well, even with a calc stirrer on the tank, the dehumidifier, his pH went up.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And there might be something else going on, but it made me excited that he noticed the pattern.
get them to turn it off for a few days and then see if it drops way back down. That's a quick, easy test, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And if there is a correlation, then we dig deeper.
Seth, lost in Reef. He's not watching right now, but
Curses. Maybe it. All right, guys, this is a long stream today.
I know.
It's almost 3 hours.
It is?
Yeah.
I always have a long stream. I'm sorry.
No, that's fair.
Dev and I always have a long stream, but this takes the cake.
Yeah, this is the long one. It's been a while since I've done this long. I'm gonna get
Yeah.
back soon because I gotta make dinner.
Yep, must be the smart person we had on today.
Must be.
Must have been you, O.
I just started having my fun like 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
You guys have been having fun the whole time.
Lesson learned for next time.
All right, you know what? I'll come prepared.
Good man. That's fun. All right, I think we'll call her today just because I do actually have to make dinner for everybody. So hopefully, first of all, thank you guys for coming on. Brandy, Seymour, much appreciated.
Thank you for asking me.
Yep.
It was fun.
It was fun. We'll definitely do it again. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it today. It was definitely a lot of random rabbit holes, but it's always makes for good conversation. So if you guys enjoyed it, as always, hit that like button. New, make sure you subscribe. And if you're not following these two lovely people, be sure you check them out. All right. Thanks, guys.